My suggestion.
I call to order the meeting of the Finance Committee for Wednesday, March 6, 2024. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First of all, I'd like to make a couple of announcements here. I'd like to thank everyone for being here. I think it's important that people show up for things like this. Second of all, I'd like to ask everyone to silence their phones, please, only so we don't have a bunch of ringing going on. And I'd like to introduce Lisa Lyons, the new member of the Finance Committee, recently appointed by moderator Bob Mullen. I think you were appointed on Tuesday. Is that correct? Okay, we have the school committee here. Would you like to open your meeting?
I'd like to have a motion to open the school committee meeting.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, the motion's been moved and seconded. Vote, Armando? Fabian? Lindsay? And myself, aye.
Okay, I'd like to also make an announcement that this meeting is being recorded by SMAC and broadcast by SMAC, recorded for later view on the internet. If you miss anything here, you can go home and watch it on the internet, I guess. That's the other announcement. Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to open our public hearing.
Motion and a second to open the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, public hearing is opened.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I know we have a lot to go through, but just for a matter of expedience, I would suggest we try and do the articles first before we get into the school's budgets.
All right, let's do that. Article 16, Supplemental Fiscal Year 2024 Departmental Budgets. Does the school committee have anything on that?
We do not.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. That's line 5 in the agenda for those who have the agenda. The next item is Article 34, School Safety, Vestibules for $90,000. Would you like to present that?
This is page 30 in the warrant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Baeta.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and the colleagues and audience that's here tonight. The article before you is a continuation of an FY23 article that was commenced at 2 of our elementary schools. This would move forward in the same idea of security and upgrades to main entrances, if you will. Vestibules create a double security entrance process, and so the article before you is to do such.
Does the committee have any questions or comments on Article 34, School Safety, the vestibules for $90,000?
Just one. Just one.
Mr. Anzavino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Anzavino, Finance Committee. Dr. Bayer, you said that this is a continuation from the previous article. So this isn't going back to do any of the ones that have already been approved?
That is correct. This would be added vestibules at 3 of our schools, as noted. The current vestibules are currently being completed under construction and within budget.
Thank you for that clarification.
Any other questions or comments from the committee on Article 34, School Safety? Any questions or comments from the public on Article 34, School Safety? Okay, we'll move to the next item on the agenda. Article 35, School Safety, Lining and Marking of Parking Lots for $55,000. Would you like to present this, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the members of the committee. One of the things that I noticed as I started in July and was doing our walkthroughs of all of our buildings is I noticed some significant issues with markings, everything from handicap to actual lining. We just did the high school this past fall. That's been completed. We're now looking to do the same at all schools. It's a safety issue in terms of the parking, especially when we have internal crosswalks. We have wheelchair situations where right now they're so faded that we can't see them. So this would create a cleaning up of all of that, and then what we would begin after that is a program to keep it up, which has a significant less cost over time. You're probably looking at rotating schools 2 at a time, 1 at a time, depending on funding and all of that, but it just establishes that one-time fix.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Baeta. Any questions or comments from the committee on Article 35, school safety, lining and marking of parking lots? Mr. Laurie.
Thank you, Vaughn. Through you to the previous speaker. Thank you, Dr. Baeta. Just general question about how you decide when to create an article for maintenance type things. Do each of these articles qualify for net school spending? Or do you put them into an article because they don't?
I went from a different process. I went from the process of the history of creating a capital plan, and I didn't really have a school capital plan to work off of. We have a facilities master plan that looks at all of our buildings that's been updated, but we haven't looked at capital items year to year that should be part, in my opinion, of capital improvements that have a length of time that exceeds X number of years, depending on what you're doing for a local process.
So there isn't, through you, Vaughn, there isn't a, this isn't a category that we have to put an article in versus putting it in the budget. Like, how do you decide when it goes in, when it doesn't? I mean, maybe it's not in place yet, but how would you?
So the way I would recommend it to the school committee is that we are receiving a one-time cost of improvement, a capital improvement to all the schools, and now we begin the process of putting it into an operational expense going forward. So I might put it in the Gibbons School in 3 years in the DAW, the following year the Hanson and the Wilkins, the following year the high school, so on and so forth, so that you're doing what I call preventative maintenance and not just asking for constant capital items on issues that potentially can be in operational.
Yeah, so Vaughn, I just have a comment, is that I took some notes based on some of the information that was sent, and I was actually surprised at how well you guys have been very consistent with how much maintenance is in your budget. So going back to FY 2020, it was 1.1, then you grew it to 1.5, 1.5, 2%, 2%. It's been trending up, and the budget's been getting bigger, so obviously the cost is much greater than just the sum of a percentage, because this year's budget is much bigger than FY 2020. So I'm impressed that it's consistent and it is growing. I think that it's important to maintain our schools so we don't end up having to hurry up and replace schools. So this is comments, this isn't a question, but I'm impressed that it's been done that way, and I just wanted to make sure it was known by the public that we do take care of our schools. We put a lot of money into maintenance, and hopefully that'll translate down the road into fewer, multiple piles of school building projects on top of each other. So thank you.
All right, thank you for that, Mr. Laurie. Any other questions or Chet, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Baeta, is this going to be done by outside contractor, or is it going to be done by DPW?
Currently, what we did at the high school is we used a third party. We will probably have conversations with the DPW around the cleanliness of the outside of the school that could potentially save us some money. Typically, they do help us with some lining, I've been told in the past, but this is a much larger project. But again, I do think we'll have collaboration with the DPW on it.
So you're looking at all schools, not just...
Right, so I'm looking at 7 of our 8 buildings. The only building not on this is the high school, which was just done this past fall.
Right. So therefore, DPW would not be able to handle all that lineage and
I think it's very specific lineage as well in terms of, like, we've had some of our yellow lines that have been done through DPW. That's what I've been told in the past. But in terms of actually lining every single parking space, it's a pretty significant
I was
third
just
party.
asking.
Yep.
That's all. Thank you.
We will, Mr. Chairman, through you, we will work with the DPW in any type of savings. We have a really good conversation. I speak with them on a regular basis, so I'll reach out to make sure that anything we can save on this or extend by not using the money, we'll absolutely do that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, you're very welcome, Chet. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Article, Lisa Lyons, you have a question?
Yes, I just wanted to follow up on a previous speaker's question regarding the maintenance and if it's included in the net school spending, unless I missed the answer to that.
Yeah. So there's two parts of net school spending. There's the projected net school spending, and then there's the final net school spending. The final net school spending typically comes out a year and a half to 2 years later. If you go actually on the department website, you'll see that there are differences between net school spending as projection and actual. All resources are utilized in net school spending. It's a significant number of lines within 9 areas, including everything to do with maintenance, healthcare costs. So things that you see as projections now are actually that, because we don't have actuals until it goes through the entire auditing process. But yes, all of that would go through.
As a follow-up to that, if I may, the reason I ask is because I know on the horizon is another school being asked to build. Is a brand new school included in net school spending?
It is not. That is a separate item. In this particular case, for the elementary school, just like the high school, it's a one-time cost extended over the length of the borrowing with a potential grant for the MSBA, but it is not part of that.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Jonna.
Elliot has a question. I'd like to remind the committee, we want to keep our questions and comments relevant to the article. I just forgot to mention that earlier. I want to bring that up. Elliot, you have a question?
I do. Will there be any guarantee on the striping and stuff as far as, was it going to last 1 year, 2 year, 15 minutes?
Well, I'm hoping it's more than a little longer than 15, maybe 16. But seriously, the idea for me and how I've done it in other districts that I've been the superintendent is I look at it as a rotating 3-year basis. So the more wear and tear is always going to be the high school because we have more traffic that takes place there. So that's always going to be number one. We have at least 2 parking lots that are in pretty difficult shape. We actually have the DPW right now helping us out with a South School situation that took place earlier this winter. So the idea would be to take a look at rotating it through as much as possible. You take a look at the South School. If this project goes through, the new building doesn't open until 27, I would still be striping it now, but I might not be striping it in 3 years because we don't know yet what's going to happen with that building, as an example. So typically 3 years.
Well, I understand the 3-year cycle. I just wondering if the provider, the contractor, will guarantee his work for some length of time.
Yeah, so what we'll probably do is get at least 3 quotes because it's over 10,000 but less than 100,000, and we'll take a look and make sure that we have some type of language in the contract that we sign with the vendor around length of time, proper utilization, what kind of paint are they using, so on and so forth.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much for that, Elliot. Jonna, do you have a question?
I'm just curious, following up on what Chet,
I will make the announcement. Don't worry. For the members of the Finance Committee, please be sure to get the mic nice and close. Make sure the light's green, too.
yeah, okay.
Excuse me, Vaughn,
this
I don't know.
better?
You got to get closer to the
Is
mic.
this better? Yes, thank you. You're welcome. Okay, following up on Chet's question, he asked, if I'm not mistaken, if we were having a private company do this work, and I'm just curious why that is the case, because I would think having our own guys would make it a less expensive project.
It really comes down to a couple of different things. Number one, what we want to do, how fast we want to do it, and what's the actual cost. We just did the high school. I don't have that cost in front of me, but I'm happy to send that forward if you'd like to see it. But basically, it comes down to the materials, the supplies, the manpower to get. In this particular case, we would be looking to start this as soon as July 1st if this went through, because we'd want it done before September, the start of school. So we will utilize the DPW in every way that we can. If we can save this from being 55 to 40, or from 55 to 54, or from 55 to 20, we will do that. We have that relationship with the DPW. I just think it's down to the manpower and the use and the time, but I'll reach out.
Thank you very much for that, Jonna. Any other questions or comments from the committee on Article 35, school safety, lining, and marking of parking lots? Any questions or comments from the public? Article 35, school safety, lining, and marking of parking lots for $55,000. Okay, hearing none, we go to the next item on the agenda, which is item 8, Article 36, school safety, security audit, $20,000. Would you like to present this, Dr. Baeta?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the members of the committee, I'm going to take the leave of the open meeting law under public safety within a school. Under the open meeting law, there is an article that allows for me to limit my comments on safety. I'm going to enter that into the record. A security audit is exactly that. It'll be looking at every single door, every single access point, everything to do with cameras and situations that we have in our schools, internally and externally. We hire a third party who has a specialty in the area of security and schools. There are a number of them in the Commonwealth, in Rhode Island, and throughout the nation. We'll be reaching out to those companies, asking them, this is what we're looking to do, and then from there, if it's passed, having it done. Our goal, again, would be that would help to create a number of different things, including capital items for the district that may involve all 8 buildings, or only 1 building, or so on and so forth. But done this a couple of times now. What it allows for is not all of us in education, including myself, really know everything about safety. And there's a lot of things that are going on a regular basis. And to be quite honest, the number one job that I have is the safety of the children and the staff that are in my schools. So this gives me a third-party overview of our needs, and then those are prioritized both into capital and operational.
All right, thank you very much for that. Sounds like money well spent. Any questions or comments from the committee on Article 36, school safety security audit? Laura.
Hi. This may just be a comment, and we'll come back to it later when we talk about the budget, but I'm curious if this audit will be responsible for the reduction in the amount of money for the maintenance of the security equipment that is in the budget.
Yeah, so two-part answer. The first part is when you're making difficult decisions about budget maintenance items, and those types of issues are always on the table. So that's one part. The second, typically what comes out of these audits are very succinct line items. A lot of it starting with technology, then moving to hardware and doors and so on and so forth. As I see it, we have a pretty good laundry list of items to tackle, just from what I know. But I'm also looking to really make some upgrades to the outside facilities of our facilities in general. So yes, it's a hurt on one end. This is really about giving us what should we be targeting as a priority, and relatively how much is it going to cost if you want to do that. It's not much different than really tackling the vestibule situation that was decided a few years ago and targeted within the articles.
All right, thank you very much for that. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Article 36, school safety, security audit. Any questions or comments from the public? Article 36, school safety, security. Okay, please identify.
But when is going to be common sense, like election day?
Excuse me. We have someone waiting to speak. Cynthia, please identify yourself for the record.
Cynthia Walsh, 1096 Park Street, Precinct 3. After all of the audit is done, and even after all the equipment is purchased, there has to be some training. We've discovered that you can have all the self-locking doors in the world, but if staff prop the doors open, or even students prop the doors open, and when my sister was a Stoughton detective, she was trying to protect a particular child at a particular school, and she was horrified at how many outside doors were propped open. so that the person that was trying to hurt a child could just walk in. So after you do your audit and after you do all your purchasing, somebody really has to stress the fact that everything has to be tight.
All right, thank you for that. Dr. Baeta, do you have a follow-up to that?
I just do. I just wanted to inform Ms. Walsh for the comment and the public. We currently are working with the police chief and his men and women, the fire chief and his men and women, and my office, meeting on a monthly basis on looking at school safety, everything from lockdown to reunification areas. We're in discussions with where that would take place and so on and so forth. And again, I'm not going to speak too much about safety. We have and are doing the training our men and women that work for us in custodial as well as administrators. We now have entering and leaving only through the front door with our staff. If in fact you're leaving the building, no side door entrances should be taken. And if they are, then we have to deal with the process for that. That was implemented as of this year. And all of those processes are in place. We're working to address some of the issues as well. I heard a comment about election. I can take that on right now too, that there are already discussions taking place to the town clerk's office about the future of that, what it looks like. There's a lot of agreement about that. It's just a matter of finding the proper location, the proper days, and many of those days are actually, as you know, in some cases provided to us after the school calendar is done, especially if it's a special primary. I would also say, thanks to the police chief and her men and women, it is a day where I have a law enforcement specialist on scene. I don't have that on any other day. That doesn't make me feel 100% secure.
For election fraud. So you can say everything you want.
Excuse me. When Dr. Baeta is done speaking, you can get up in the line and identify yourself, and I will call for you for your questions and comments. Is that okay? Okay, perfect. Dr. Baeta, please
Thank you. So
continue.
recognizing the comment that was just made, I'll address that as well. I feel very comfortable saying that any of the men and women that work for this police department will do what they need to do if, in fact, somebody comes into our building on an election day, in the same way that they would do it if they had to drive their car over there. Again, we understand that the issue of what's going on in society very clearly, and anything can happen tomorrow, and I cannot guarantee it. I cannot go into any of our buildings any day and guarantee any parent that's in this room, any taxpayer, that something won't happen. It's the one thing I can't guarantee. However, what I can try to do is, in this particular case, we worked with the community. I know for a fact our law enforcement are hired on that day for an election day, but they're also trained to react to what's taking place. What's not a good idea? What's not a good idea is taking a Facebook picture and then putting it out there and showing the regular public about it. That's not a good idea. And that happened in this situation this year as well. And I'm not on Facebook, but I get it all. In the same way that I get the negatives, I get the positives. What's important is the town clerk and I, the day before the election, I was up here, and we've already met to discuss and get all the bodies in the room, including the school committee, the town clerk, who has a very strong idea of wanting to move it. She has to work through her bosses and so on and so forth. But the idea is going forward to try to make a change to that. If we want to shut down the schools every time there's an election, if that's the way the school committee and the town decide to go, then we have to look at school calendars being different than what they are. It is what it is, but I do feel that there's a lot of discussion that's taking place. I wasn't here before July 1st, not to throw an arrow at anyone else, but it's a work in progress, and I think there'll be ideas coming forward to make that change.
All right, thank you very much for that. And the gentleman in the back, did you have a question on that? Please come up to the mic and identify yourself for the record.
I don't need a mic.
Yes, you do.
You do,
I don't know.
but hang on a second. You need a microphone so the people at home can hear you.
So my concern is there's no one.
You have to identify yourself.
My
for the
name
record.
is Alex Eustace.
Thank you.
My concern is there's no one at the front doors to make sure that each person that walks in the door stays exactly where they're supposed to go and exits where they go. There's just, you walk in and you can either walk straight in past where you're supposed to go, which would be election, and just do whatever you want. I did it myself. There's no safety protocol. So you could say everything you want to do these, spend this money on these third party, but you have to do common sense first.
Is your question regarding the audit, the security audit? That's what the article's for?
Yeah.
Okay.
So are we going to worry about putting security measures in place before we even sit there and spend money?
So are you advocating for not doing the audit?
I'm advocating to at least do common sense, meaning put security measures in place.
All right, I'll ask Dr. Baeta. Would you like to answer this?
It was brought up to even...
You ask a question regarding the security audit. Dr. Baeta, would you like to cover this?
In response to the common sense of if the gentleman who's speaking is noting a particular incident that took place at one school, I'm happy to discuss that. I believe I know the school that he's talking about, and I'm happy to figure out between now and the next election what else could be done. School department has to hire another police officer. I put a person in the front there and paid them to be there. They're not going to have a weapon. They're not going to be a police officer. Is there a police officer available? I'm happy to reach out to the chief and say that in this one particular, I believe it's one particular incident that has come forward. I'll ask all my principals as well if they knew anything else, and the town clerk, and I'm happy to put something in writing out to the public in response to this question.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions or comments from the public? Article 36, school safety security audit. Hi, Mr. Bob Cohn. Please identify yourself for the record.
Bob Cohn, Precinct 5. The schools at night are pitch black around the building. I know he addressed it. And anyone working the polls at night, the police officers have to walk the people out to make sure. Also, on this safety audited, I hope we take in consideration what's going on at the high school. And I hope our teachers are going to be well protected. I will say no more. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Cohn. Any other questions or comments from the public? Article 36, school safety security audit. Please step forward and identify yourself for the record.
Keith Jorgensen, Precinct 2, and I'd just like to suggest that if you're going to put in safety measures like that, that you write them down, make it a protocol, and then you can have that checked and then tested.
Thank you very much for that. Any other questions or comments from the public? Article 36, school safety security audit. Please step forward and identify yourself for the record. If anyone else has any questions you want to just kind of line up, that'd be good.
Yes, name is James, Precinct 4. With all due respect to the previous comments, that's what the security audit would do. It would pick up the pros and cons of the policies that are already in place and make the improvements. I know it's a long night, and I think people should have and follow up with that, but that's what the security audit would do. It would pinpoint some of the areas of weakness, highlight those areas of strength, and hopefully strengthen everything up for the safety of the students and the kids.
Well, thank you very much for that. Any other questions, comments from the committee on this? Article 36. Any more questions or comments from the public? Article 36, school safety security audit, $20,000. Hearing none, we will go to Lisa Lyons. You have a question on Article 36?
Yes, I'm sorry. I just want to follow up on the safety. I was not aware that there was an incident, so Dr. Baeta, or through you, Vaughn, could somebody just explain for me and the public watching exactly what happened so we can help relate that back to this article? Thank you so much.
The article is for a security audit. We're not really going to get into what happened somewhere. This is the articles for a security audit. I don't want to go down too far down the road.
That's why I use the word brief, so it can inform myself and the rest of the public watching. Thank you so much for your consideration.
You're welcome. The article is for a security audit. It's a school safety. Did you want to go to the budget, Mr. Byetta, or Dr. Byetta?
I'm happy to go to the budget, but in response to the question, that I can respond to that if you wish.
If you would like to respond to that, Dr. Byetta, that's fine with me.
Yeah, I have no formal incident that's taken place at a school. I have a upset, rightfully so, parent who said this isn't safe enough. And I have to say that based on what I got back, we are working on it, as I said earlier. But I don't think we can blatantly just say it was unsafe. I don't have a police matter situation that took place. I believe that we're talking about one elementary school. It is the one school that is a pretty wide way to get in, and it's also the school that we're looking to rebuild.
Thank you very much for that. Any other questions, comments from the public? Article 36, School Safety Security Audit, $20,000. Hearing none, we will go to the next item on the agenda, which is item 4. Article 15, General Fund Operating Budget FY25, Education Budgets. Item A, Stoughton Public Schools.
Page 66.
Page 66 in the budget.
For the Stoughton Public Schools, it's page 66 in your budget.
Okay, Dr. Byetta, would you like to present this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to introduce the Stoughton Public School FY25 proposed budget. This budget represents a total of $62,868,429, which is an increase of 7.1%. That takes into account a 3.8% increase, as well as $2 million. We are hoping to petition you for the consideration of the full Chapter 70 SOA, or Student Opportunity Act, funding that we receive from the state, and any additional funding that should come in. I'm going to pass it to Dr. Byetta to present the specifics.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Joe Byetta, Superintendent since July 1st, and Stoughtoниan for a long time, product of the system, and it's nice to be home. As this is my first time working with the Finance Committee, if there are questions that I cannot address tonight, working through the chair, please send them forward, and I will get you the details that you asked for. I've been doing that for a few weeks now, but I'm happy, as this is a newer budget process for me, and in general, you may have questions that I just don't have the answer in front of me, but can get it to you. I assumed this responsibility on July 1st, really with an intent of working to move the district forward. The budget that was presented by my office, which is in this binder, which came from all of my leadership team, was put together on what we believe and we were seeing as needs. That budget was a significant increase, that, as you know, over 15%. That budget was then, through the school committee process and other situations, scaled back. However, before you is not a level services budget. We are not keeping what we've had. We've had to make some changes and sacrifices. The total sum of new positions in this budget in general education is 0. The total new number of positions in special education are 1 teacher and 3 paraprofessionals, and potentially 1 EL teacher and a 0.6 EL teacher based on our EL population. So that's a net of the 4 from one side, 1.6 for the other, 4.6. That is not what our budget was originally, as you know, but that's where we're currently at, pending the Finance Committee supporting the statement from the chair of the full SOA funds coming to the district. So what is in the budget before you as well is 17 FTEs in total that are being taken from the current operating budget. We hope to be able to sustain some of those in other ways, but the fact of the matter is that is where we are right now. We are plus on mandates and negative in other areas. Those areas were provided as a list to you are $450,000 worth plus of positions and $1.8 million worth of actual line item expenses. That was provided to you in the first Appendix A, which then became Appendix B, and those positions are lined item. As you can see, those positions and/or expense lines are pretty significant, $2.3 million in total from the opportunity to fund all that we think is needed. That said, we recognize, the school committee and I recognize, I should say, that budgets are part of a process, and a process that requires us currently to not only continue to make an argument for funding, but also to push our state legislators in this area. One of the biggest flaws in the Chapter 70 this year is the inflation rate that was used is below 2% versus 8%. And so the counter to that is that although our high needs dropped by about 1.5% to just under 50%, the problem with that is that last year we received $1,339 per every student that was in this district as of October of 22. $1,339. That was the $4.9 million. We were a top 20 district in the Commonwealth for per pupil increase from the Commonwealth. Fully aligned to things like a 200% jump in the number of ELL students. That does not take into account our current migrant shelter situation. We can speak about that at some point if you'd like as well. However, what it does also do is the pressures that are put on us around specialized programming, whether it ELL, special education, transportation. My average student transportation in special education is between $250 and $300 per day per student. I'll repeat that again. $250 to $300 a day per student per day. And we can talk about other lines in that. We've had to hire EL staff because we have to provide, as of next year, a minimum of 90 minutes of instruction, direct instruction from a highly qualified EL teacher for any student who's considered an L1, L2 beginner student to the district. We are, from the chart that I believe you have in front of you under enrollment, just to talk a little bit of connecting finances to enrollment, you are in the beginning of the second year of a 10-year increase, projected increase in student enrollment. The projection from the NESDEC group, which is a study that will be done in Stoughton every year while I'm here, is projects that our high school could be at over 1,400 students in 2033. It's a high school built for 1,080. It's at over 1,100 students today. That is nobody's fault because, as we know, the MSBA process is very conservative and rigorous around how many students they will build for, but that's the process. In the enrollment that you have, we have a small bubble that's going through in the older ages, and then we have the climb that's taking place in residents of the community. Again, the migrant story is a second story that we should talk about. Added to that is I've provided to you a enrollment that includes all students and a new report that I'm happy to share with the Finance Committee as you wish, where every month I look at how many kids are at the DOS school by grade so that we can keep a track of what we're seeing. And what we're seeing with increased enrollment is we projected X, and now we have Y, not including the other situation. So I provided that to you to try to show you a little bit of a picture. Added to that is the numbers that I can report today are continuing to change. I did a report this last night that I asked for, and I just wanted to share this number so that you get a feel for the change that's taking place and where we're going. In October of 2020, the number of students who were considered Ls and Fels, formerly English limited, we still have to do things with them, but it's not as much programming. In October of 2020, we had 389 students. In February of 22, we had 447. In March of 24, we have 668. We have doubled, roughly. And what does that mean? It means we've had to grow the department. It truly is very much a department like special education that has over 760 students in all. That is not common to a suburban community like Stoughton in the last X years. Many of you know my background as an immigrant student. My office is where I learned English. I then went to the Gibbons, where they used to send you after 3 years, and I'm here before you today as your superintendent. Stoughton's the right place. It does great work for kids. But we haven't seen these types of numbers even when I was a kid and we were growing, in that time, Portuguese Azorean community. You know, there were 75, 80 of us. With some other groups that were here. And oh, by the way, we all got along really great. But that is a major change that's taking place in this community. People want to live here. They want to go to school here. They feel safe here. We have a lot of our own issues. We know that. I was on Howland Street this past week, just to share a side story real quick. 15 cars outside of a house that's for sale. I've never seen more people outside of a house. In a nice little neighborhood, quiet, people are wanting to move to Stoughton. That's kudos to us for your public safety, your DPW, your library, and your schools, providing all of the services and all of the other ones I haven't named, senior center and so on and so forth. I'd like to paint the story of how we got to this via what always happens in public education. And that really comes down to money and comparisons. It's always that. In 15 years I've been doing this, we want to compare ourselves to Sharon and Canton and Easton. Let's move on, folks. We're not those communities in any way, shape, or form. And I like being in Stoughton, and I choose to live in Stoughton. So that's not a bash on them. That's just, we are a different community. It's that simple. And we're changing. For the first time in 2022, the enrollment in Stoughton Public Schools, students identify themselves. We are now a majority minority district. Most of our students identify themselves, more than 50%, as not Caucasian. That's a changing demographic within our community. And that is ELL, African American, Hispanic. Our three biggest languages right now are Brazilian Portuguese, Haitian Creole, and Hispanic, in that order, of the 40 languages that we have in the district. So when you talk about budgets, I think we talk about the comment I always like to make, which is who do we want to be? And we compare ourselves by trying to go for goals that are important to the kids and to the sense of the community. For the first time, this district now has at least 90% of students reading at grade level by the end of grade 3 as a target. We've never had that type of detailed target. We put that in place because literacy is the most important thing in those first grades, along with the social and emotional support that kids may need at certain levels of comparison to each other and socialization and all of that stuff that we can get into. So I tried to provide you details of the most recent DART tool, the District Analysis and Review tool, to provide Appendix M, which compares us to the communities that we are most compared to in 10 different areas, from demographics to test scores and so on and so forth. The size of a district does not matter. It's literally what are the needs of the children, what are our targets and our priorities. So our communities, if you want to go west, are Agawam. If you want to stay locally, Attleboro, and then you go south to Dennis Yarmouth, Medford, Peabody, Rockland is the closest, Watertown, West Springfield, and Woburn. All of these communities have have the same things in common. A, they are growing, some small numbers, some large numbers. 2, increase in low income, increase in special education, increase in ELL. That's where we're at as a community. And I try to provide you all the reports if you decide to go through that. Lastly, and we can go into line items if you've liked, I tried to provide you the enrollment strictly from DESE of what's happening every year and the percentages of the changes in population, so you're just not taking it from me. I'd like to finish up real briefly by just talking about net school spending and talking about Chapter 70. When we look at Chapter 70, and many of you are smarter than I am on this because I've heard you speak at meetings, one of the things that's really interesting about Chapter 70 is that you're really looking at two numbers, right? You're looking at everything from school committee expenditures to curriculum directors, I'm just reading off, to teachers, to school leaders, to professional development, to textbooks, to psychological services, to pupil services, to employment retirement contributions, to employee separation costs, to active insurance for employees. That's all part of Chapter 70 as you look at school expenditures. And so when you look at net school spending, what you're basically doing is you're taking a highly educated guess on where you think this is going to end up currently. You can't really look at net school spending as a hard number until everything's been audited and you know every number that's been put into place, and that's when you figure out. I will tell you, it's my understanding that you have some prior, or others have some prior discussions around what that net school spending should be. We are in a decline from a high of right around 130.1, if I remember off the top of my head. And we're not going to be settled at 125, which I hear has been the discussions between elected officials of where we should be. And when we're there, that's what we have, and no more, no less type of argument. I wasn't here for those discussions. Those are the things that I've been told, and those are the things that I have been trying to work with. In the cutting before you of the positions and the sacrifices, as I like to call them, because that's what they are, we are looking, and let me before I do that, let me talk about a pressure point that's really, really important. And I'm sorry I didn't mention this under the previous pressure points. Superintendents and school committees are no longer what they were 5 to 10 years ago when it comes to hiring. And I'll tell you why. There's nobody to hire coming out of college. I'm going to repeat that again. There's nobody to hire coming out of college. We are all stealing from each other. 7 employees in August into September that we stole in Stoughton from other school districts to come work for us because there were no other employees. And those employees are not coming for a pay cut. In some cases, they are actually making less money. They're taking less money because the contract they're coming from was higher paying. But they're tired and they want to come to a school system they know is trying to do the right thing. And that's directly from the mouth of those folks that I've spoken to. But the idea of hiring a $55,000 teacher, which is literally on our pay scale for starting, is unheard of. We no longer get 300 applicants for a kindergarten position. We no longer get 400 applicants for an elementary teacher. We're lucky if we get 60. And in some cases, it's because somebody knows somebody and says, Stoughton's a great place and you're going to love working at the Hanson. And there we go. We did that this year a number of times of all of the folks that we took. So the pressure point is contracts. As you know, I walked into a situation where the school committee and the prior administration was working on the contract. We settled what we believe is a fair contract. The contracts are uploaded, by the way, on the website, so all the MOUs, the actual rewriting of the contracts is still with the MTA and with the custodial group, but those will be put up. But I already put up the MOU so that they're there. You don't have to go looking for them. They're under the school committee section. But as you see from I believe, a handout, Mr. Chairman, if I can come to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know if I heard that, I will email this to the chair tomorrow morning, so that you have it electronically as a new.
All right, thank you very much.
I was asked, Mr. Chairman, to provide you typically the middle section of this page as it's coming out. You have the increases, decreases by account, but the one that I think a lot of people have a question about is contractual situations. So before you, you have the Stoughton Teachers Association, both Unit A and Unit B, 397 members. That's a $3.8 million increase for FY25. That's the biggest increase that we've seen. Our paraprofessionals are under 100,000, to be quite honest. That's because we're cutting 300,000 right now in 12 positions for that. And then as you go down, you'll see the increases in each and decreases in each because of either positions that are open we haven't been able to fill and they're not budgeted, and or agreements that we already had. We'll be entering into negotiations with custodial for 26, administrative assistants for 26, and food services for 26. Food services is not noted on here because food service is a standalone line, revolving line, so you have to work within that body of finances. Lastly, as part of this general presentation and then your questions. When you look at what was provided to you, I like to be very transparent, so I put out a lot of information. I met with my staff, had a virtual call with my staff about what's going on, and so on. But the two-pager, if you will, of the sacrifices that are being made are detailed and specific. I would like to make one clarity tonight, if I may, and I've informed the chair. On the line item for the cuts in contractual services for the music department, I took the contractual services to literally mean contractual services. It's actually mostly transportation. I am going to make a switch and put that back into this budget without any requests of further funding from you by cutting somewhere else. I won't cut personnel, but I'm just going to take a line item. I myself have cut my own contract, not salary, but some of my benefits I've cut from my contract to make this fairer.
Just to be clear, you're talking about this Appendix B?
Yes, the Appendix B, I'm sorry. The Appendix B, where you have on the first line, as you go into music, I believe I'm trying to find it now. Thank you, Madam Chair. Line 108, music program contract services, that will be restored into this budget. I want to be clear, Mr. Chairman.
And you said that you're going to take that out from the cuts and you'll find the money elsewhere.
I am. And the reason why I did is I'm not used to seeing the word contractual services mean transportation. Matter of fact, never have. I'm not blaming anybody for that. I own that. It's my mistake. But I will be working to present to the school committee Tuesday night a change of that for the actual notations. This is very much an equity issue for me. I'm a parent of a music kid. I was a musician myself. I cannot and will not ask my bands and my musicians to have to take their own cars while I'm putting my football team on a bus. It's an equity issue. But I will tell you, I would also tell you, though, so that you know, that we also have some other issues there in transportation. We have some off-site sports that take place where kids are driving their car, and I have a serious problem with that. And it's something I happen to hope to address that in the near future as well. But I know for a fact that sometimes the kids like to do that. I just feel that as your superintendent, I have a requirement to ask that those kids take our buses to and from that site, then they can get in their car and go home.
That's the way it used to be.
It's the way it should be.
Well, thank you very much for that, Dr. Baeta. Do you have anything else? Okay, do we have any questions or comments from the committee on the Stoughton Public Schools budget, part of Article 15 General Fund operating budget? Remember, we're going to keep the questions and comments relevant to this. Of course I want you to start, Dave Lurie. Please identify yourself for the record.
David Lurie, Precinct 6. Through you, Vaughn. Thank you, Dr. Baeta. I appreciate the presentation. I appreciate you putting money back into the arts. The Finance Committee, Town Meeting, Select Board, Town Manager, none of us can move money around in a school budget. We don't have the authority to. Matter of fact, if I had the authority to just move all of the town's money into the school budget, we still couldn't have you put money back into the drama and music department. We couldn't do it. We don't have the authority to do that. So I just want to make it clear, we work with the schools on a bottom line number. We don't get involved with telling them how to spend their money at all, okay? We do question the way they spend their money. And you'll hear a lot of that, but I'm just for the record, at the end of the day, town meeting will just vote a bottom line number, okay? My question to start is that I go back with several administrations ago. It seems like in a very short history, I've had several administrations. But the first one I worked with, it was an interesting conversation in that it was always about never reaching the average spend per pupil. We're always $1,000 per pupil behind, just like you were indicating, those like communities, not the Eastons and the Sharons and so forth. But like communities, we were coming up way, way short. But you know what? Never before us was ever a budget that asked us to spend that extra $1,000. They were just basically saying, by the way, when you approve this budget, we're going to be way behind. Okay, and we used to work collaboratively. We used to, we had some pain that we'd always find a way to get through real budget problems. So that was in 2019 that I found that the delta between us and like communities was $1,000. By the way, $1,000 per student per year short is close to $4 million. That much per year is how much was not getting to the school budget. It was substantial. It was a lot. What happened is over the years, the town had made some interesting investments, starting with the Stoughton High School. And all of a sudden, more and more money started to show up. Then all of a sudden, the state realized, we didn't really calculate how much Chapter 70 is deserved in the town of Stoughton. So they started pouring more money in. So for the last 3 years, we've seen nothing but more and more millions and millions of dollars piling up. So now we're at a point, the question that I have through you, Vaughn.
Thank you.
Is that my calculations show that when you do that like community analysis, that per pupil spend is actually $1,600 higher than those others. The delta between that is $2,600 per pupil times, close to 4,000 students. We're starting to talk about some serious money that's been moved into the school's budget. So when we talk about like the quality of education in Stoughton, we often hear about like class sizes. I've heard many of your meetings, you talk about we have to stay under 19, I think, or maybe 18, I don't know what the number is. But it was always that if we somehow come up short, we're not going to be able to maintain that number. How could you explain an increase to where we're $2,600 higher and $1,600 more than the average town, where all of a sudden we seem to have actually solved our problems according to the last administration I'm talking about? How do you explain that spend per pupil and how it affects class sizes?
When you look at the years that I've been involved as a secondary educator and then as a central office administrator, the number one thing around research from all resources around literacy is small class sizes matter in K-3 and in particular in K-1. That the target for those students with smaller class sizes is one of the variables that sticks out more so there than it does at the upper grades, meaning middle school and high school within research. There's a number of studies out of Tennessee that talk about this that are actually been duplicated over and over again. I'm happy to get some of that information to you. I think to your first part of your question in terms of like communities and the number that you're using, and I don't have it in front of me, but taking it for granted, we have to remember that when we're looking at Chapter 70 and we're looking at per pupil, we're looking at everything. So let me just read off some of that. You're looking at out-of-district expenditures is part of that. I do not control Southeastern. I do not control school choice. I do not accept to continue to be a better school. Southeastern, by the way, is an extension of Stoughton Public Schools as far as I'm concerned as your superintendent. I cannot offer some of the things that they offer. I hope to offer some of that stuff in the future, but I can't be a traditional vocational school. The tuition to the Commonwealth charter schools, the tuition to Horace Mann charter schools, the charter school transportation, the tuition to non-public schools, tuition to collaboratives, that would be private collaborative, private special education schools and private collaboratives. Transportation to a certain extent, I can. Insurance to retired employees, the school budget is part of that, but we don't create our budget based on those things. Those are things that are outside the realm of our ability to control the per pupil direct expenditure, because they add things. And I'll give you one that's going to see, I will predict as an educator, I'll make a highly educated guess. Whatever number it was increase to health care for employees of the town is going to have a significant increase to this budget for the current FY24 once it's completely audited and done. Because the increase was over $1,800, according to my employees. I don't know that to be true, but what I've been told. So we're going to see a potential per pupil expenditure increase, probably higher than we typically do. So we might see $500, $600, even $700, $800. We could potentially see a year where we see a growth that it goes above that. The school per pupil expenditure formula does that. I don't. The school department doesn't. What we can do is we can take on some of the issues around transportation. And I'll use that one because that's my pet peeve one. I think I've fired more transportation companies than any superintendent in the Commonwealth, and I'm proud of it, because the price gouging is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. $250 to $300. You know, we have students in the area, and I cannot give you the locations, but I can give you a map, not a map, but an index of a student. You know, Stoughton student, $250 a day. I can put that out in a way where you can't figure out who the students are, because I wouldn't want to be able to have you do that. But transportation is a perfect example of one. We get one bid every single year, every town, every community. Nobody ever gets multiple bills. We have filed multiple bills as a Mass Association of School Superintendents to try to get this reviewed by third parties at the state. It hasn't happened yet. That bill is actually dead this year, as one example. So when we look at, big story, when we look at per pupil expenditure, I like to get into how much more did our teachers cost, how much more did administration cost, how much more did X cost, and then say to you and others, well, here's the reason why I think we saw a significant increase in per pupil expenditure on the audited numbers with everything in it. You can't just divide my budget by the number of kids and say this is our per pupil expenditure. That's not the way it works. So that, in general, that would be my answer.
Okay. Should I follow up on, if that's okay with you?
Is it relevant?
It is. It's
okay, and you can follow
very
up.
relevant. Very, very relevant.
Well, thank you for that,
right.
Dave.
So what I think I'm hearing, I just want to kind of maybe just nail it down, is so we're not going to see an increase in the size of classrooms, because with this the money that's been coming in and the enrollment going up, you're able to keep up with that enrollment to maintain the classroom sizes that you need. Is that what I heard?
So in general, the answer to that would be I could tell you that. But unfortunately, I have a shelter situation in the community, so I can no longer tell you that. I can project out in general what my numbers look like. That's why I did the NESDEC study, because I'm looking at, do I need that extra kindergarten teacher or not in my budget for next year? But when I pick up students, for example, this year we picked up 89 students after October 1st. There's no way that I can give you that.
By the way, I totally understand that, and I'm willing to park that aside ostensibly because it's a temporary situation.
Right. Well,
ostensibly it's because we're only getting one-time money. I assume it's a one-time event. So let's put it aside for a moment, right?
I would only say to you, since we can talk a little bit more detail. So we currently do not know, as a school district, what the funding source is going to be for our migrant population. I've had a freeze on the budget. Believe me, I know very well from a lot of the parents in the room and a lot of my staff about a freeze. I put a freeze on the budget, meaning no expenditures except for health and safety, because I have received to date $43,000 from the Commonwealth, and I have a $500,000 problem. We will receive payments supposedly in April and May, and then again in August, and those monies will come back through us, and we'll be able to hopefully make ourselves whole. In the fall, from September to December, and I apologize, Mr. Chairman, if I'm stepping outside of the scope of the answer, but in the fall, we were paying $55 per student per day to be transported from the Sonesta to Stoughton Public Schools. $55 per day per student. That's the best price. eventually, thank goodness for First Student. Kudos to them. Thank you. They're our partner. We were able to find a yellow bus at a more reasonable price. That said, the $104.89 per day that we're supposed to be getting for every day, which equals about over $18,000, which would actually be higher than our per pupil expenditure in general, literally means we haven't seen the money that we're owed. So I put a freeze on the budget for a number of different reasons. One of them, really trying to be conservative to not have a supplemental budget within the FY24 budget. And two, to make do with what we have and hopefully the Commonwealth coming through for us as they say they're going to do. But for July 1st, just want you to know, for July 1st, these students are not part of Chapter 70. There's no agreement to give us more money, and the hotel contracts are through a minimum of December, and we're already hearing that those contracts are going to be extended.
All right, thank you very much for that, Dr. Baeta.
Vaughn, I'm going to pause on any more that I had, but I do have two more questions that obviously they take a few minutes, so I'm going to hold here, but I just want to be recognized later to be able to get to those questions.
Well, we'll see. Someone might steal your question. Laura, you have a question?
Yep. I have a few questions. So I completely appreciate the need for trade-offs and hard decisions. And going through the budget, there are a few things I'm hoping you could just shed some light on, a few things to clarify, and a few things that you might speak to, either the decision why or potentially what the impact of those cuts. Most of these are focused on some of the cuts. So first line I would like to get clarity on is the cut of the position of Fine Arts Director. There was a note in the budget that says position deleted.
Laura,
Yep.
could you tell us what page you're on the budget,
Yes,
please?
page 3.
Thank you.
Under art. Not clear to me what that note means. I'm wondering if that means that that position is accounted for elsewhere or if that position is being wholly cut.
So the position was restructured as part of the Stoughton Teachers Association negotiations with the school committee. It is now a part of the department head position at the high school. We could just not come to an agreement to have a district-wide director without putting it into Unit B without any teaching responsibilities, which is part of the Unit B. So instead, we did move it into a department head position at the high school, and that's where it's funded.
Okay, and does that mean that the scope of the role has changed significantly?
We will have to take a serious look. I've met with the current director about what that means in terms of his teaching load, in terms of the number of activities that take place on weekends and so on and so forth. We're going to have to take a look at how we do that. But that is just part of negotiations and restructuring.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. On page 2, I'm just curious about the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. It looks like there's no funding, but I'm curious how it was there in the first place. Is that a new thing that just hasn't been funded?
That is correct. Originally in my budget, we had it funded at $30,000, which we're going to be going through a lot of required training from the state on this topic, like it or not, agree with it or not. It's actually part of the teacher evaluation system now. We'll be releasing that stuff in the near future, but we ended up not budgeting it at this time.
Back on page 3, elementary enrichment program was cut from 177,630 to 0. Can you speak to the decision to do that and what the impact of that will be?
Yeah, so the biggest impact that we have around many of these things is where they were originally funded and have been fully funded. So we have issues here around this, the NIGHTS program and others where we've been doing it through ESSER funding. Those are no longer available, so that became something that we cut. I do see the potential for us to be doing something there. I've worked in districts where we've had some type of a fee system so that we're able to get students to stay and participate. We also, as part of that, did the same thing with the NIGHTS program. I met with the folks that are in charge of that yesterday, maybe today, can't remember now, and I've asked for a fee structure presentation to come to me to look at how that could be done within that. It's something we should do, but it's also a nice to have when you're making $2.3 million worth of sacrifices.
Right, and thanks for that, because that was another one of my questions. Next, page 7, the cutting of all kindergarten aides.
Again, that came down to, we want to keep them, to be quite honest, but it came down to where are we cutting in terms of positions and so on and so forth. It's having been someone who was on the school committee at one time, I do remember these positions being in and being out. Hopefully, there's an opportunity for us to relook at this going forward, but we went with that as the cut. In some cases, if not all cases, those positions could be actually allocated back into special education because we will have positions open there. We do have, and they are union members within the association, so we'll go through that protocol of what that means to the 12 positions. It's a hard cut from the perspective of a lot of new information that we've received this year around behaviors that have been happening. I can tell you that one of the things that internally we're looking at is where else we could cut somewhere else in order to be able to say, can we keep 6 and split it between the grades as a compromise? Can we prioritize it for July 1st if we have 3 more retirements and we're able to save $150,000? Those are all things that are on our list of priorities.
And was there consideration of not cutting all of it, but some of it?
We started with all of it, but my goal is to work it back. We also have other potential positions that we're looking at that could be cut. School committee will be undertaking some further discussions Tuesday night, I think. The FY25 budget is a continuation in our budget, and you could see some further changes coming from them as well, through me and them. Not a pinpoint of them, us working together.
And then last question related to that is, do you have a mechanism of measuring the impact of those cuts?
Well, I think in terms of a mechanism, I would say, anytime you take any adult that is a support staff out of a classroom, you're going to have some type of impact. The question is going to be looking at other options. Clearly, we've had some internal discussions about how do we change this because of the impact. I have some new information in terms of enrollment numbers that are making me a little bit more concerned. I don't want to cut our paraprofessionals. We also have an opportunity here to take a look at some of the grants that are going to be made available through the Commonwealth over the next 2 to 3 months, we think, because there's still a significant number of grant money available through DESE that hasn't even been released. We just applied for a $150,000 grant today or this week, being notified that at minimum we could get 70 or 75 and at max maybe 150, potentially towards transportation for the current fiscal year, which would be a great thing based on the prior information. But it's a competitive grant, so we don't necessarily know that we'll get it.
Okay. I have a few more, but I'll let others ask. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Eric, you have a question?
Yes, hi. Welcome to FinCom. It's good to meet you. First off, I'll start with a comment just to thank you for your responsiveness to concerns that were clearly loudly voiced regarding music transportation. As an arts educator, I really appreciate your flexibility on that. And I had the similar question as Laura about the arts director, so I appreciate you explaining that as well. Looking at the budget, I'm mostly struck by the really significant increases in special education, both within the district and the private school tuition that we're paying. Just purely informational, I'm curious if you can go into a little more detail about what's driving that expansion of special education.
Yeah, there's 2 real big hits here, right? The first one was the increase last year of 14% that came across every single district in the Commonwealth with tuitions, and that hit is now compounded yet again, even though the number is below that. I believe it's actually right around 4 this year. That's a number that until last year, I'd never seen it higher than 2.5 to 3, and then actually most years 1.9 and 2. So what that's done is it's compounding all of that in one major year, just like anything else. So that's number one. Number two, we do have an increase in enrollment in students who need further supports. As you know, within the IEP process, we put ourselves out there as a district with the families to say we have a program available. The parents and those at the table, which is my staff, have the opportunity to have a back and forth. The parent may say, I'd like to see a collaborative, or I'd like to see a private school. They have the right to that. We are currently adding a special education program. We currently have, I'm just going to use the word X number of students in specialized programs. I did give you a chart by grade so that you could take a look and see, but I think there's no number there lower than 20, if anything, because I'm really, I get worried about that information. I'll leave it at that, being public. With that rise comes two significant mandates. One is transportation, which I just said earlier is my pet peeve of just out of control. And second is the specialization of the students' needs. And so we have students with all types of physical, emotional, and academic stresses and supports that we need to provide them. So what you're seeing is coming out of this, I don't even like to say in the word anymore, the pandemic, I'll just use that word, whatever we want to call it. What we see is a group of students that are much more physical and verbal at all ages, but specifically at the younger ages. And the number of, my priority in my role for 15 years has been to say, they're Stoughton kids. How do we educate them? How do we do it? For a number of reasons. Forget the financial for a second, because it is less of a cost. But I also believe that those students are with us for lunch. They're with us for after school. They're with us in church and synagogue. They're with us in the playground. They're with us on the baseball field, in whatever limitations that they may be. But there's also another benefit. And the other benefit is the child who doesn't have that, and learning from them about being understanding, friendly, kind, and that not every child has your ability or my ability, that there are other students that have other struggles. And so with that comes the cost, and that cost right now is really seen in transportation. Sorry to beat the dead horse, but it's also seen in the cost of teachers. That is the number one group of teachers that cost me the most to literally steal from other districts, because we want highly trained staff, but they're not coming out at the rate that we used to see just a few years ago. So you're seeing a compounding of that as well.
And that would have been a follow-up question then, is like, what's the concern to confident ratio, I guess, about actually being able to staff those really highly specialized positions?
Yeah, so it's all about, for example, within our specialized programs right now, we have done a couple of different things. Number one is we've really looked at the needs of the individual students and began the idea that some students may have the same academic challenge, but they need to be in different areas because one is academically doing well, socially not as well, if you will, while another student is very physical. Right, so we're working that way, and actually we just started that this year through the prior administration school committee. I think it was a brilliant idea. I've actually visited those classrooms, and I can assure you that it's two different things that are happening. I think the other part that goes with it that's really, really important is that we know through research, not mine, but if you take a look at Boston Medical Center and the research around the survival rates for preemies, it's huge, awesome. That's awesome, right? It's above 90% in the Commonwealth. That's awesome. As a dad, can't support it more. But with that comes, at times, challenges that are both medical as well as academic, physical, and social. And we're seeing an increase in that population as well. It's you know, everything from feeding tubes to you name it. We have in all of public education is the great equalizer. Public education is the great equalizer. And so we have a responsibility to those students, and my role is going to be to come back to you every single year that I'm your superintendent through my school committee, my bosses, and say, we need to start another program because it's good for kids, it's the right thing to do, and oh, by the way, it's financially beneficial to the town. Even if you throw in healthcare costs to that teacher to the town side shared costs, and you look at an average now of almost $100,000 for out-of-district placement when you toss in transportation. So we're with North River, where we see our costs in that high 50s, low 60s, Pilgrim area. Thank you. My boss actually sits on that committee, and I'm forgetting that. Sorry. We're just seeing those drastic increases, and the other part that we haven't talked about that's going to go with that is both special ed and non-special ed, is alternative education for students with behavioral issues within the school setting that struggle, and we need other means to educate them. So we're working on that as well. Hope that answers it.
You're welcome. Any other questions? John, did you have a question on this?
Dr. Bayard, I wanted to just say thank you for being so prudent to move to freeze the funds until the monies are actually there. I appreciate that, but my question's twofold. What if those monies don't come, and how sustainable is that? If that you're going to count on monies, I mean, constantly? I'm just curious.
Yeah, to be quite honest, I'll use common language. We're in a pickle, right? The unfortunate situation of this is Mr. Coulter, who's written a pretty significant memo to the state. I met with the lieutenant colonel, if that is right title, the gentleman who's retired, who's in charge of this. Along with Senator Timilty and the representative's office, we met and asked for answers. Our biggest issue right now is that we are not at the table of the decision-making process. And I'm going to give you an example, and I know this to be a fact, and I think I can say it with the outgoing commissioner of education who's leaving. When COVID happened, forget the politics for a second and all of that, we as superintendents and the commissioner were at the table. We are not at the table. I could have a better conversation with a wall right now than what I'm getting from the Commonwealth. And kudos to Tom for sending a message that basically says, you know, get out here, get down here, come see what's happening. We are the 6th largest community of this situation, and we're the only suburban community. What does that mean? That means stress on our system. And that stress is a problem because people are getting more and more frustrated. Regardless of our political affiliations, everybody's getting frustrated with this situation. Because when we're not at the table, I get the question all the time, when can you say no? I can't. I mean, I guess I could lose my license and then become homeless and go to the shelter because I would lose my license. I have a fiduciary requirement to carry out the law, and we are a shelter state, the only one in the nation, so that's an added complication to us as well. But I believe that today there's some announcements going on in the near future that the hotel tax situation is going to be somewhat resolved, but we don't know what that means either. I'll defer to Mr. Coulter on that when the time comes. But for us, it's a truly pickle situation day to day. We have 83 students on Monday. We have 81 today. 2 students just left. We're trying to figure out what happened. We're trying to figure out, did we get our Chromebooks back? You know, we're doing all of that stuff and trying to put something in place, and that just isn't an answer. We went months without a third party up at the hotel on Page Street. Months without anybody. My team went up to the Sonesta, registered every single student. We checked and double checked on all of the stuff that you have to do to register a student. We got it done, and we got them into classrooms the way that we were told we had to do it. And we did it with open arms and kindness, recognizing that this is a very frustrating situation.
All right, thank you for that. Lisa, you have a question?
Yes, hi. I just want to clarify that what you're saying in a more basic way is that there is a significant potential for this illegal immigrant situation, and you just said carry out the law. So if they're illegal, the bottom line... Excuse me.
Excuse me.
Excuse me. Thank you. If there are legal immigrants situation here, the bottom line is that the taxpayers of this town, should the state not step up, and to date, it's my understanding we've only received $43,000, that this will fall on our taxpayers. In addition to all the taxes that have already increased this past year. And currently, when you say it's a pressure,
Lisa.
does that mean we do not have
Lisa,
the wherewithal?
is there a question?
I'm in the process of asking it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
That means there is no current answer to fund that, and the burden will fall to all the taxpayers of this town, in addition to other potential costs becoming a burden to the tax-paying citizens of this town. That's my question.
So it's a hard question from the perspective of not, to your point, that these children are here, I have to educate them, I don't have any other thing except that's what I have to do. If in fact those bills aren't paid, quote unquote, then I have to go to a supplemental in the fall town meeting to finish paying those bills. Probably would come out of free cash. I don't think it would be a tax override increase, recognizing that all of that money is taxpayers' money. I get that, but that's probably the route that we would take. I don't think I would make a recommendation to the school committee that we just try to find it, because it could be a significant amount of money based on what I've seen so far. So it is stressful. It is a pressure point. We're in a pickle, all of those great words I've been using tonight, but there is no answer right now. We do not have an answer today, whatever time it is, because I'm doing this every day now, weekends included. I do not have a specific detailed time on how to fund these students, except what I've been told, $104.89 per day, every day that they're here. But there is nothing in this budget, nothing in the state budget anywhere on what happens on July 1st for next September. There's nothing. We don't know if they're going to continue the $104.89. We don't know if they're going to say, hey, Stoughton, you did such a great job, here's $5 million, and we're all happy. We leveled the budget. We don't know any of that. We just don't. I can't answer that any more specifically. When I do have an answer, I will absolutely share it with the chair and get it out to you.
Well, thank you very much for the question, Lisa. Thank you very much for the response, Dr. Bayata. Do we have any other questions?
I just need to comment or ask a question on what was said by a previous speaker. So,
is this one of your two questions you promised
No,
me?
it is not. It's coming up on this previous question, is that if you need a supplemental and you have to do it by opening another town meeting, I don't think there's an article for a supplemental, is there?
There's an article, we discussed it tonight, supplemental fiscal year 2024 departmental budget.
There's an article in the...
It's Article 16.
It made it in, Article 16.
We covered it earlier when you were here.
Article 16 did not get reviewed, though. We didn't talk about it.
It was the first article we discussed when we opened the meeting. Article 16.
Oh, but we didn't do anything with that, though.
We asked if they had one. He said no.
There is, okay, so...
So we have it on the agenda again for the 13th because the town has to give us their answer.
So it's
If they
just
have
not-
any supplementals. At
So
this
it's just
time, we
not
haven't
funded.
received any request for supplements.
So there's no funding in that?
We haven't been asked for any right now.
There's no request, so no funding.
It's the standard article that goes in for supplemental budget, but we haven't received any request yet.
So we just need to know by the time we wrap up at the end of the month, and that's
Got it.
when, that's our deadline? So we do have a deadline. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions or comments?
Oh, my mic is on?
Mr. Anzavino, do you have a question on this?
Thank you for your patience, your explanation, and your presentation. I will say, I mentioned it to you before the meeting, when I got that list of cuts, I fell over, because it's really cutting back on what we're offering the kids in this town. And I'm hoping we can do something over time, whether you get more money in from the state or what have you. I'm certainly hoping we can restore a lot of that, because, and I was glad to hear you say that there was the misunderstanding with the music and that you put it back, because that was one of them that really got me. I says, how can you take that away if, we'd be losing some very great programs that we have with, like, the marching band, the traveling and all that. And to lose that, it wouldn't be fair to the kids with all they've done to get where they are. So I do hope over the next few months, between all of us and the state, and hopefully something can be done to reinstate some of these programs that are very important to the kids. And so just to be sure, I believe we've only received one payment right now from the state. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. And I thought there might be another one coming soon, but...
It looks like end of April into May is the latest information that I received, and then the last payment would be into August.
All right, because I know, well, from what I had heard, we had only received one. With this new budget, and I know it was touched upon earlier, but I'm just not clear. With the budget you presented at the 7.1, is that affecting your class sizes?
Yes.
All right. Has it gone up significantly?
It'll go up right now. What we're seeing right now, based on the situation that we're in, is in classrooms that started at 17 and 18, we're at 21, and in a couple of cases 22. And that's the concern, because that also doesn't include any new enrollment that we get for next year.
Okay. So, well, I mean, that's a 25% increase, so. And that is very important. And, I was, like I said, I was very surprised at some of the cuts that had to be made, and I'm hoping we can work through this over the next few months. We know it's very, very much in flux for revenues and so forth, and, hopefully we can get something done to reinstate some of these very important programs. So
I appreciate that comment, and the committee will continue, and my office continue on a regular basis, reviewing, looking, considering, applying for all of that stuff in order to see hopefully the ability to do some of this stuff.
And I wish you luck in doing it, because I know you've been put in a very, I don't want to say, you've been put in a very hard position when things are just imposed on you with no no say in it at all. And as you mentioned, the town manager has sent a letter, with just in general for the town, as far as some of the things that are going on, that they want them to come out here, talk, let's get this straightened out, or see what they can do. So I wish you the best. Again, I thank you for your time and patience with us, and for the presentation you gave. The explanations you gave were very helpful to me anyway. So thank you, Dr. Bayetta.
Well, thank you very much for that, Mr. Enzavino. Elliot, you have a question?
I do, a very brief one. Does the state still have the MCAS test, the high stakes test?
The MCAS test is in place for grades 3 through 8, and as a graduation requirement in grade 10. There is a ton of debate going on that, because there's a petition to put it as a question on the ballot for the fall. So all of the parties that know everything are trying to come to a compromise before it becomes an actual ballot question in the fall.
All right, thank you for that, Dr. Bayetta. John, you have any questions? Chet, you have any other questions? Diane, you have anything?
I don't have a question. In all transparency, I work for the school department, so it's hard for me to say something. But I just want to address something that Lisa said, and I have it right in front of me. In 1982, the Supreme Court said that regardless of immigration status, that a student had to be educated. So it was a Supreme Court ruling, not a Massachusetts, not a state. And it still holds today.
All right, thank you for that, Diane.
Vaughn, if I could just respond to that.
We're
because
not
I was
going to have a
mentioned-
bunch of back and forth.
It's not a back and forth. It's,
certainly
I
feels
believe
like it
every
certainly feels a back.
I want to acknowledge what she said. Every student in the world is precious. My only point is that the burden cannot fall on the tax-paying residents of Stoughton. That's my point. Every child is precious.
All right. Thank you very much, Lisa. Okay, that was not your intent. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Diane. Mr. Anzavino, you have any other questions?
Not at this time, thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Anokian.
Laura? Lisa, you have any other questions?
Yes, I would like to hear Dave Laurie's question.
That's your question. So your question is, can we hear Dave Laurie's question? We know that. Yeah, we know Dave's got a question, right? Dave, you said you had two more questions. You've already used one. You got one more question, right? Let's hear
I have
it.
another clarification from a previous speaker who asked a question that was relevant to my question when I was first speaking about classroom sizes.
So what was the question?
The question that came up was 7.1%. The 7.1% was supposed to keep our classroom sizes fine at the numbers that they wanted. It was, when I was asking the question, it was because of the problems that we picked up when the state started bringing in the Sonesta and all these other families where we had to find room for them. And that was inflating the size of the classroom, not the 7.1%. Now, if I'm wrong, I'd like to be corrected.
Mr. Chairman, through you.
Sure.
I'll give you an example, Ms. Laurie, with some details. In the last 2 weeks, I have 25 ELL students in the queue to be enrolled in Stoughton Public Schools. These are legal residents of the town. I'm not getting a single penny for those students in the fall. They will have an impact on our class size depending on the grade that they're in, regardless if it's a 7.1 budget or a 6.2 budget.
So when I asked the question through you, Vaughn, it was going to go up regardless of the immigration problem.
So I took your question, and I'll clarify. I took your question to mean in terms of what I know currently is my class sizes have gone up specifically because of the illegal immigrant situation, regardless of what we call the migrant. The fact of the matter is, just in the last 2 weeks, I've got 25 more EL students in the queue to go through testing and assessment. They're already placed. That has an impact on my class size. I will tell you, Stoughton has something that internally we call Brazilian summer. It just happens that we pick up a significant number of Brazilian students into Stoughton between the months of January and roughly the end of February vacation. That number can be 10, it can be 20, it's been as high as 30 and 40. They come into the Commonwealth, they are here through the protocols of landing at Logan Airport and coming to Stoughton, living with family, enrolling in Stoughton Public Schools. That's been happening here roughly for the last 10 years, but specifically for the last 5.
Yeah, so just to be clear, then the shelter, regardless of the shelter, we're at 21, 22 students per class average without the migrant families.
In some cases,
that's what I want to know is where are we at 21? You said 21 or 22 students per class, regardless of the one-time problem that we have with.
For example, today I lost two of those migrant students. I don't know what grade they were in. I believe they were secondary. That has an impact on the positive to that class size. It's lower today than it was yesterday.
All right. I think I'm okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Laurie.
Mr. Laurie, through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to share with the committee what I gave you, which was a school by grade enrollment. I'm happy to now give you how many teachers are in that grade, and you can see from month to month how that number goes up and goes down, goes up and goes down. Sometimes it stays at 62 and there's 4 sections. Sometimes it becomes 59. One month we have one in there. If you look at it, it climbed, I believe, somewhere around 10 or 12 students in one grade in one school. That's what's going on. Our churn, which is what we call it internally within DESE, our churn as a district, meaning number of kids leaving, number of kids coming out, is constant and daily, is above 10% now for the first time. It was always under 4%. We're now climbing in around that 10. So you get 10 in, 10 out, 10 in, 10 out, literally on a regular basis, and my staff know this because they're the ones that are dealing with it at registration. But I'm happy to provide those numbers as well if the committee wishes.
You good, Dave?
Yeah, I have my other questions still saved for later. I needed to clarify. Classroom sizes was part of my original question, and I needed
Promised me 2 questions
I just asked for
earlier.
clarification.
So do you have another question then?
Yeah. There was, last year, if you remember, we got this giant number. It was close to $5 million from Chapter 70, and at the same time, we were in a crisis with our health plan to make sure that not only all the employees on the municipal side, but also all the faculty on the school side we needed an answer for that. So there was an exception made for Chapter 70 in that one instance as a one-time fix. A few months later, fast forward, that problem gets fixed. All the rates changed. We managed to get by the problem. So now, $1.9 million that was denied the schools in the FY24 budget now comes in, right? It comes in as money that you couldn't use within your budget because it went to joint costs before. Now it comes into your school budget. Is that right?
Well, I get the premise of what you're saying, but if I give you $1 and you don't give it back, I've lost $1. If you've given it back to me, I get the $1 back. Is that what you're suggesting?
No, your actual budget increases by $1.9 million over time, not just in FY25, but over time.
Oh, you're talking, so
You get you're now at $1.9 million in an operating budget that continues year over year at that new number. So you couldn't realize the full $5 million in '24. But you get to realize it in FY25, and year over year, you'll be able to realize that as well, correct?
in terms of the formula, yes.
Right. So I did the math, yeah?
My explanation to that is, I believe you're talking about if Chapter 70 came in at 4.9 million and there was a hardship and $2 million, 1.9, whatever it was, I'll just use 2 million. I wasn't here for it. I just heard about it, happened to be at a meeting about it as I was coming in. It was before my time. That $2 million was provided because of the healthcare crisis that we were in. So when you look at, quote, the budget from the state, that $2 million, if you will, is part of our budget in general, right? Because the state is not saying to you, did you give $2 million to the town because of a health crisis? Yes or no? We'll see those audited numbers on the other side, potentially, but we won't see it now. So I'm seeing a new number in Chapter 70, which has gone down to $2.1 million increase, and I believe it was 3.8% that came from the town, which was $2.2 million. So you add the 2.2 to 2.1, it gets us into the 7.1% total.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I see the math. In terms of long-term, every community that takes any money and doesn't put it in Chapter 70 and puts it somewhere else, within that Chapter 70 DESI process, it's still there. It won't be allocated for on my end because I can't tell them that I spent it. In terms of my budget.
I know it looks kind of muddy about how the money just kind of gets absorbed into things.
Yes.
At the same time...
Dave, is that the question? Did you have a question here? I'm just...
Go on. Are you going to allow me to finish my question? I guess.
I thought you finished it
if
three
you
times
want,
now.
You can gavel me if you feel it's necessary. I mean,
Do you have a question that Dr. Bayer could answer?
He's been answering my questions perfectly well, and I'm happy that he is. All right.
Do you have another question?
I just want to make sure that I'm talking money. It's not like I'm going off talking about something like I usually do, right?
Thank you for
So
the
I'm talking about
confirmation
money.
that usually
So
you wander off, though.
I promise I'll be talking about money.
Thank you very much for the public confirmation. Finish your question.
Okay, there we go. So the reason why it gets muddy for me, and I just need clarity, is that when the town said, here's 3.8, and you said it's, I don't know, somewhere around $2 million, whatever that is. But was that 3.8 including the Chapter 70 is outside of what the town said it was going to give you 3.8. That was based on the levy, it was based on sources of revenue, and so you not only got 3.8 plus the Chapter 70, but you also got $1.9 million realized this year that you couldn't realize it in this year's budget. So it gives you that much, $1.9 million more to spend on the programs, the faculty, the curriculum, anything that you want to spend it on. But it's $1.9 million more than you had in the year we're currently in. That should have been given to you back then, but it's now given to you in this budget that we're talking about.
So it's my understanding, and you can correct me, or the Finance Committee can understand me, but going back to my school committee days here in town and my years as a superintendent, traditionally the town manager is the maker of saying to all the departments, can you come in, we're all going to try to come in at 3.8%. I believe that the town side is 3.8, we're 3.8, thereabouts, give or take. We get that number. Now, where that number comes from is all of our revenue sources that we have through taxation and so on and so forth. That's the bundle. Now, if you're suggesting that the $2 million that was provided from the school department is now part of that 3.8%, maybe it is, I don't know.
I'm saying the opposite.
Okay, so I don't know the allocation of what the 3.8 comes from. I haven't seen where that is coming from the town of Stoughton.
My understanding is that when the town says here, there's a new number of new growth, there's money from all these sources, that we're going to cut up the pot and say 3.8 and 3.8. That has nothing to do with the Chapter 70 that was already allocated the year before that you couldn't access until now.
I don't have access to that number. I didn't have access then. I don't have access now.
You do have access now,
I have
don't you?
access to 3.8%, $2.2 million from the town manager's recommendation, and I have $2.1 million in SOA money. That's my total. Those are my two blocks of money that I have. Now, if you're suggesting that of the 2.2 million, 3.8%, 1.9% of it comes from that money that was previously given, I don't know. All I know is...
I don't think, through you, Vaughn, I don't think that the town, when it says let's cut up what it is that's new, revenue, 2.5, Proposition 2.5, new growth, all the sources of taxes that come into our general fund. It was the general fund. It wasn't Chapter 70 that they were giving back to you at 3.8. It was, hey, guess what? We don't need to keep begging you for money to fund our health program. It's already buttoned up. That becomes now fresh new money in FY25.
So my response to that would be, as the superintendent of schools, I don't know where that money went. I have no idea where that money went. I've never seen a line item where that money went. I know that my employees, I can only speak for mine, but I'm going to guess all employees, received around a 20 to 25% increase in health care. I know that there was an agreement to do that because of the crisis. To suggest that that money is now available to me as an extra $1.9 million is just not accurate.
Just to make for the record, Vaughn, just for the record, I counted in 3 years ago, so it would be I want to say FY23.
We're talking 3 years ago now, right?
FY23. Vaughn, it was $4 million that came in, new money. They realized a math mistake. We have more poverty in the town than we thought. We're going to add $4 million. Then in FY24, they bumped it to $5 million that you couldn't use.
Mr. Lurie,
and then hang on.
Mr. Lurie, hang on a second. Don't tell me hang on. We're talking about this year's budget.
These are facts. These are facts. We always look at previous year budgets when we look at how changes happen over time. And over time, we now realized another $2 million. That brings us to $11 million in the three budget cycles brings $11 million to the school budget.
Thank you for the history lesson, Mr. Lurie. Madam Chair,
yes,
do you have something to add to this?
Yes, I would like to add that we lost $2 million in ESSER funds. So we are facing $2 million that is not available to us. It's not available to any school across the country. So we have $2 million that's one of the reasons that we had to sit there and look at elementary enrichment programs and the summer programs, which hurt me because my kids love them. But if that grant is gone, you can't spend that money. we have learned that very clearly, that there's no money, the grant's done, there's no more money left over. But I also want to add that because we gave up that $1.9 million last year for the town, we did not include that in our budget. When it came time to calculate the 3.8% increase over last year's budget, there was $1.9 million less to calculate, and that works out, I think it's about $70,000, $75,000, which would pay for a bus, for example. So there was less money available as a result of us not taking that full 1.9 this year, and then we have that loss of that $2 million of ESSER funds.
All right, thank you for that, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that. Yep.
We have any other questions from the Finance Committee? Or does the public, maybe we should, let's get some questions and comments from the public. We'll come back to the committee. So questions, comments from the public, if you could line up somewhere and just step, thank you for that. Just step forward, state your name for the record. That's it.
Okay.
And thank you.
Hello, my name is Julie Powers. I'm a senior at Stoughton High School as well as band president. I just wanted to say on behalf of everyone sitting here as well as the Fine Arts Department as a whole, we just want to say thank you so much. Mr. Baeta, thank you so much.
Just step forward, identify yourself for the record.
Hi. Yeah, I'm Frank Lyons, Precinct 8, town meeting rep. And I'm going to be a little cute here on my first question. Dr. Baeta, have you...
Can you step forward to the mic a little bit?
Sorry?
People at home want to hear you.
I just wanted to ask if you were aware that the Tuesday Jazz Band and the Winter Guard both won competitions in the past week, along with that there was a really admirable Best Buddies basketball game?
I am, and I loved it on my account. I can't even, whatever the name of my account is.
And are you aware that historically Stoughton has given very strong support to the schools?
I am.
And so I would like to point out that, up until the last week, I think he referred to it as a pickle. I would refer to it as a crisis. That the town has historically supported the kids. Now, I have another question kind of to clarify what our problem is. Right now, you had mentioned a current budget freeze. And I know it was before your time, but prior to that, I think the freeze actually came in the prior school year. And that is a separate issue than the budget we're talking about today. So your very generous offer to straighten out the transportation from the music department wouldn't do anything to help this season.
That is correct.
All right. And once again, I'm taking advantage. Were you aware that you can buy chocolate bars and get a pizza perhaps to support, maybe buy a duck to support some of the school activities? And I can mention the ones I'm aware of, but I know athletics has them and everything else. And would you recommend to the people that hear my voice that perhaps they should reach out to try to take advantage of these things?
I do. I agree.
All right. And those were all questions. Okay, so this is to the cuts, and as I said, we had used the word pickle. I think it's actually a crisis, and I'm the type of person that I try to come up with solutions, even if they're not good solutions. So my first one was, would you be willing to buy candy bars? And it sounds like you are. So expect maybe people to catch on.
Did you say something about buying a duck?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The duck drop. Very cool.
Thank you. All right. I never heard of the duck for sale.
Oh, you will. but yeah, this is kind of special. But one of the other things I wanted to get to, all right, is that both the town manager and the superintendent came into budget problems. It's been a little more challenging for the schools because maybe 6 months behind. They were behind, and they discovered a crisis. The crisis has, for better or for worse, mostly been addressed on the town side, but we currently still have a crisis on the school side. And I understand that the Finance Committee is advisory. You guys can offer advice and suggestions, but you don't approve the money. That happens in town meeting. Would it be possible to explore getting some money from free cash to perhaps help out with some of these cuts? I would suggest, I think at one point people had looked at that, but I'm hearing again and again, I mean, would more time help, Dr. Baeta? It sounds like you, first of it is the crisis of the budget. Second of it, and this could be addressed in a longer term, but the town charter forces the budget to be put together by the end of the year. And historically, that doesn't work for schools. So I've got a couple of pieces here. To kind of kick it down the road, would the Finance Committee explore maybe giving some money to the school budget through a motion? I believe you guys could make a recommendation anyway, to kind of buy a little more time, to get this straightened out. So, because what I'm kind of seeing in the room and hearing is that the athletes are looking at the band and the paras, and everybody's kind of fighting for a piece of the pie. And were we to, and my understanding is the money not used out of free cash goes into a stabilization fund, and the purpose of a stabilization fund, I use the term rainy day fund, all right, but I think it's raining, all right. So would that be possible to buy, and I know free cash and stabilization is not meant to be an ongoing budget item, but in order to buy a little more time for Dr. Baeta, would it be possible to investigate that? And that's a big, long question, Dr. Baeta, but is that something that might help?
Anything to do with the process, going back to many, many years ago where I sat where my colleague, Ms. Weiss, sits as a school committee, is that this is a very fluid time period within budgets. It always has been, in my opinion. It was in a prior year where there was a supplemental budget in the fall town meeting for over $2 million here in Stoughton. In my last community, it was for $120,000. That's a big difference. So I think the budget process continues to be fluid. I know you folks have a lot of work to do. You're going to have other pressure points as a committee to balance. I respectfully don't disagree with Mr. Lyons' comments concerning the specificity of the more time to try to get by and improve this budget is a good thing, not a bad thing. And the case in point is, and I can only speak from my experience as a taxpayer and a former town meeting rep, we know what's been happening with enterprise accounts in this community for a long time. Last year, we used free cash to save them. That's how it was done. You have an internal protocol on how to use free cash, when not to use free cash. Stabilization is at $6.4 million, which is fantastic, probably one of the highest in the areas. All of those are in play, but at the end of the day, it really takes the school committee and the finance committee and the town meeting making those final decisions. My job is to carry out the role of what I get, to provide recommendations to the school committee, and then to see if, in fact, those recommendations to come through, and then put the budget into play on July 1st. So I believe the school committee, and I won't speak for Ms. Weiss, but I believe we're going to continue to have these discussions at school committee meetings around what is prioritized, what could, what may not. Is there a change, or is there something else we want to drop and bring something back? I think those issues are going to be fluid for the next few weeks, if not a couple of months.
All right, and another question, this is kind of along that, have you heard about our great bands? Are you aware that there's a candidate forum coming up on Monday the 11th?
We really shouldn't deviate off of this.
Okay.
We're going to try to stay on topic here.
Okay, and in that case...
We steered off with the Ducks a little bit, so we're going to try to get back on track here.
The great Ducks. But
so we're not going to talk about candidates.
Thank you very much. I really realized I kind of pushed it a little.
Thank you very much.
Amanda Grant, 191 Atkinson Ave. I'm also a para at the DAW with the TLC program, so I'm part of the special needs department. I work hand in hand with the kindergartner paras. They are essential to elementary ed. With the behaviors we are seeing now in Gen Ed kindergarten, teachers cannot do it alone. That being cut shows children are not what's important. What's important is the bottom line, and I find that disgusting. with the cut of the nights program, with the cut of the vacation programs. It's not about the children, it's about the bottom line. Dr. Bayetta, make it make sense. Make it make sense. You're taking essential personnel away from our youngest learners. I also want to bring up the 3 positions that were added to central office last year. Why? Do we really need assistance to assistance when we're losing essential personnel out of our classrooms? I guarantee nobody on that school committee, and Dr. Bayetta has not taught in a kindergarten classroom for a very long time. The children should be number one, not your bottom line, and not 3 more assistants to assistants in central office. Dr. Bayetta, please make it make sense, and please, how do you justify losing 12 essential personnel to our youngest learners?
Please identify yourself for the record.
Arga von Schumacher, 133 Perry Street. Arga von Schumacher, 133 Perry Street. I'm here tonight as a concerned parent. I am deeply troubled by the budget that has been submitted by the school committee for approval. While there are many aspects of this proposed budget that concern me, my primary focus is on the proposed cuts to kindergarten paras, elementary and middle school after-school programs, and the cuts that are proposed to be made to our nursing staff. Kindergarten paras are indispensable in shaping the early educational experiences of our youngest learners. These dedicated professionals ensure the safety and well-being of brand new tiny humans who enter school with little concept of right or wrong, acceptable behavior, or the ability to control their bodies. Paras play a crucial role in addressing the socio-emotional needs of these young minds, creating a positive learning environment. Supporting kindergarten teachers and paras is vital, as their collaborative efforts are essential for a thriving classroom. Neglecting their support may lead to educator burnout and potential migration to districts that prioritize their role. Recognizing and valuing the contributions of kindergarten paras is not just an investment in the well-being of our children, but also a commitment to the future of education. I can't emphasize enough how important and vital our kindergarten paras are to our schools. In addition, reducing health services staff and eliminating clinical aides and substitute nurses raises serious concerns about the care of our students. What happens when a nurse is sick? Our students rely on these services, and compromising them is simply not an option. The health and safety of our students is paramount. It needs to be a given. There should be no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Furthermore, the elimination of elementary and middle school after-school programs threatens to create disparities among our students. Extracurricular education should be equitable for all, regardless of socioeconomic status. By cutting these programs, we risk creating a divide between those who can afford outside opportunities and those who cannot. And in today's climate, we really can't afford to widen that gap. I'm also deeply troubled by the proposed cuts to our performing arts program, although that's been taken care of. Moreover, these cuts risk transforming our town into a place where families hesitate to call home and where students may feel disconnected from their school community. I urge you to reconsider this proposed budget for the well-being and educational opportunities of our students. Our schools should be a place where every child has the chance to thrive, and these budget decisions should reflect that commitment. And for the record, these families are not, they're migrants, they're not illegals. Do your research.
Thank you for that.
My name is Kate Dunn. I live at 838 Central Street. I am also a member of numerous volunteer parent groups in town, and I wanted to get up and speak. A lot of what I was going to say has already been said, and I'm going to try to avoid being redundant. But In case anybody doesn't know, they've mentioned a couple of times the SOA, which is the Student Opportunity Act. It was enacted in 2019, and it is a state mandate that each school district comes up with a plan to eliminate disparities, improve student outcomes, and promote for post-secondary education preparation. And we also have a push in town to better publicize how great our town is, and I feel like some of these cuts that are being proposed are really not in line with those ideals. We have a strong focus right now on social emotional development. And I feel like cutting these paraprofessionals is going to significantly affect that. We have spoken about what a concern we have for health and safety of the students. I feel that cutting the nurses' services are going to significantly affect that. We have already spoken about how there is no budget for more teachers this year, and I understand that. We have also spoken about how many more children are in the classrooms, and I feel that this math does not add up. We are looking to improve our student outcomes by having smaller class sizes, which is clearly out of our reach. Something that could potentially be in our reach is providing the supports to our educators to be able to stay with these children and provide them the services that they need. There has been a massive uptick in learning disabilities, in fighting, in behavioral issues, in drugs in the schools, in bomb threats during school assemblies. There is so much going on in our town, and we have gotten a lot of bad press, and we don't deserve that because we're wicked awesome. So it's really important, I feel, that we take another look at what we're doing, getting rid of the paraprofessionals. We want to prepare our children for post-secondary education. If we are cutting them off at the pass and not providing them these services, then we are setting them behind the 8 ball from children in every other school district that has supports that we do not have. I think that pretty much covers all of the things that I meant to say here, and and also the point about trying to retain the teachers that we have. We've already discussed the difficulties of getting new teachers in our towns, and I feel that if we're eliminating supports from these teachers, that they very well might go elsewhere. That's all.
Well, thank you very much for that.
My name is Robert Cohn, Precinct 5. I just want to say one thing about the superintendent. He's got a miserable job ahead of him. I sat with this gentleman at 18 years old. He sat next to me at town meeting. A lot of questions. He's back here, and I know he'll do a good job for this town. He lives here. He pays taxes here. A couple of questions I have. The census came out last year, and there was a mistake. And the schools picked up $5 million. It actually was more. They gave $2 million back to the town to take care of the insurance. If I'm mistaken, please cure me. In this year's budget, they picked up $2 million, part of that. Another area that should be looked at, assistant superintendents, 3 at $150,000. Should be looked at, should be taken care of. And I say to you people out here, this is an estimated budget. This is all an estimate. You people should be calling your state senators and representing and demanding that they do something. The town manager wrote the letter, he mentioned it, that they want someone to come out here and see what we have here. You're looking at the schools. How about an ambulance you're going to get? 14 police officers gone. How are we going to take care of that? I'm older now. When I call an ambulance, minutes could be important things to everyone here. This is important too. But this gentleman right here, he's not God, but he knows the ropes of the game, and he's a smooth talker too, I can tell you that. But as I say to you, the Finance Committee, the Board of Selectmen, myself, and I'm a very vocal person if people don't know me, I guarantee you, you'll get some of this back. I don't know how much because we don't know. The cherry sheet gave them $2 more million this year. That was just coming out. But as far as this goes, 2.5, you haven't gone through 2.5, we did, and it worked out. And to sit here, I understand your problems too. My kids were graduated here, and they're very well, went to the top schools, and they're really, my kids are 45 and 50, top jobs in this country. So just have hope and stay in your state, and watch Joe. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Please identify yourself for the record.
Hi, Peter Ventresco, Precinct 8. Good evening, Mr. Baeta. The previous speaker said we were going to get the money someday. I see that far. I might never see that day because cities and states across the country have in the same predicament, crying for money to Washington, and the money's not coming. And Mr. Baeta said they got a small check. Maybe they've been here for the better part of a year, and we probably got paid for a month. Now, my question to Mr. Baeta is, how much money has it cost the school for these children, illegal children up there at the hotels on your budget?
It's going to be in excess of $500,000.
$500,000. Okay, so the Sinai Hospital, the governor's already saying she wants to take it over and fill it up with migrant families. Now that's going to put a bigger burden on the school budget for next year. And once they do that, we're going to lose over $1 million of real estate tax coming to the town. So that's going to put a bigger budget on the municipal and the school side. So I don't know how we're going to make up all these shortfalls. And we are a right to shelter state. There was 2 in the whole 50 states. I forgot the other one, but the other one pulled out of it because it couldn't afford all these immigrants coming in. So we are the only right to shelter. And we can get out of that. And there are towns in Illinois that refuse to take these immigrants because they can't afford it. We could do the same thing. I don't know how they did it, but they did it. And it wasn't like a big referendum that you had to go out and get 2 or 10,000 signatures to get on a state ballot. It was done pretty quick. And I'm also against, we are spending all this money for illegal immigrants on the cost of our children are paying for it, our children. And I think that is wrong. And let's see. Okay, I got the cyanide, and we don't have to take them. And okay, and why are we the only suburban town out of 350 cities and towns in the state of Massachusetts to have these immigrants? Nobody's asked the governor that. But you don't see a lot of these affluent towns getting them. Like last year when they dropped an airplane load down of immigrants down at Martha's Vineyard, they landed in the middle of the night. The next morning, they were on a barge going to Cape Cod. If they can do it, we can do it. And they could afford it. We, as a town, we cannot afford this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I reach it? Kind of. I'm Daria Schumacher. And I'm Katie Gorman. Hello. We wanted to take a moment to share something that's very important to many of us. There's been talk about potential cuts to our after-school activities, and we can't help but feel concerned. After-school programs aren't just something extra to do. They're a chance for us to explore our interests and learn new things and build friendships that can last a lifetime. My time at the after-school clubs I went to when I was at the Gibbons are some of my favorite memories, and we met each other doing the drama club and student council after school at OMS. Where else can we have so much fun and do something productive at the same time? As we consider the possibility of cuts, let's think about the alternatives. Would you rather us spend our time in front of screens playing video games all afternoon until we turn into zombies? Or would you rather we continue making memories and learning together while doing drama club and the other clubs offered at OMS? After-school activities are more than just activities. They're part of what makes our elementary and middle school experiences special.
Well, thank you very much for that.
Hi, Abigail Eustace. I didn't find out till I got to the meeting tonight that the Nights of Summer program would be cut. And I just wanted to quickly mention, I have a third grader who receives his summer services through his IEP at the Nights of Summer program. So he's withdrawn during the day from the activities for phonics, ELA, and math. And I feel so proud that he's been able to have this program for 2 summers now. I believe many of us here know friends and family who were summer school kids. Because of Nights of Summer, my child doesn't feel like a summer school kid. All of his friends go to summer school, his regular education friends. And I was excited to send his first grade sister to Nights of Summer this summer too, so he wouldn't feel like he's the one in the house with the learning disability. So I understand that money talks and we can't make money appear, but I'm just talking about one child in our district and how the Nights of Summer program helps him feel like he belongs, and he feels different enough when he gets taken out of the classroom to work with our wonderful special educators, and he feels different when he leaves the Nights of Summer program, but at least he's still in the building, he's with other kids enjoying the program, and he'll still get summer services through his IEP, but the Nights of Summer program and the way it was formatted allowed him to be with the other kids and feel a little bit more normal, for lack of better words. So if there's any finagling, I hope that that's something that we continue to consider, because I know my child's not the only one who really benefited.
Well, thank you very much for that.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Campbell. I'm from Precinct 4. I just wanted to follow up on what the previous speaker said about the Nights of Summer program. Those programs have played a role for many special ed students receiving summer services far even before the pandemic, where they weren't funded by ESSER funds. So I would ask that, I would encourage people to if possible, to try to restore those those programs. So many of the students that are receiving special ed services have goals in areas of socialization and social skills and social emotional skills, and those are things that can't be, they really need to be practiced with a whole community, not with like a tutor in isolation. So it really, those services really, those programs really do provide a service. It's not just, it's not just a summer program. It really does provide educational services that are vital to many of these students. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Any more questions, comments from the public at this time? No? Mr. Anzavino, you have something on this?
Thank you, Mr. Anokian. I just want people to understand, this is going to be a tough year to go through all this. It's not going to be an easy time. It's something we have to go through. But you must understand that the original budget that was voted by the school committee and by charter was done by the end of the year. We have received that because we get that budget. That's what they submitted. So we have that. So we know what their original plan was. We know where they're at today, and we understand from what Dr. Bayetta has told us. He and the school committee will be working as this is a very fluid state that we go through every year, just a little worse this year. They will be working to see if they can restore some of the programs that were there, restore some of the cuts they made. And I can assure you that we know where they were, we know where they are now, and we're all going to be looking at the revenues that are made available to us. We haven't seen the revenue sheet that we normally see, but hopefully we'll get something soon with the breakdown on what the revenues really are that we have. We haven't seen it either. So hopefully, as time goes on, based on what they originally asked for and where they're at today, we'll see how things go with the revenues. And if things can be done, we certainly will be looking to work with everybody involved. Or I'll speak for myself. I'm sure the other committee members feel similar, that we go through this every year. It's just this year is a little bit more extreme, and we certainly hope to work out the best for everybody in the town, the taxpayer, the schools, the town. You know, we try and do our best to be fair to everybody, and we'll just see what happens come May. Thank you, Mr. Minokian.
You're very welcome. Laura, do you have any questions, comments you want to add to this?
No, thanks, Vaughn. I'm good.
Okay, you're welcome.
My hand is up.
Do you have another question, Dave?
I have some statistics I thought would be good based on the information that everyone. I think it's important because I took this down. We had an information request. You know, what were the new positions that were added to the school district over the past 3 years before the one we're talking about? Because we had a nice presentation about the handful that we're adding, but then a bunch that are being cut. But before the adds and the cuts, in the last 3 years, I counted about 67 new positions that were created.
What year are you going back to?
Going back from FY 22, 23, and 24. Across those three, that was where the information came from. A quarter of those were administrators. They weren't faculty, so 3/4 of them are going to be faculty. The other 25% are going to be administration folks. The other thing that I thought was interesting, because somebody brought up MCAS, they wanted to know more about that. Well, I went to DESE. I was directed to DESE. What was interesting about that, and this is a rampant problem throughout the country. This isn't just isolated to Stoughton. But in 2019, our language arts, we were graded at 55%, English language arts. You fast forward to 2023, it dropped down to 43, 55 down to 43. So that's obviously in the wrong direction, but we had a pandemic, you know, that we had to deal with in the middle.
So is that the question,
The statewide, I said I wanted to bring some facts that people brought up in this informational session that I think are valid. So statewide, the same English language arts, it dropped from 56 down to 44. So very, very similar to what Stoughton's almost like in tune on English language arts statewide, so we're almost like matching what the state did, dropping off substantially, looks like around 11, 12%. Mathematics, Stoughton used to have 50%, 2019. It dropped off to 47%, it only dropped off 3%, but statewide, it was a spread of 8%. They dropped from 49 to 41. So we didn't do as bad as the state then. So I just think it's important in context to understand that everybody's dropping off probably because of a pandemic, but it's been a precipitous fall. So the question will be, how do we dig our way out? How do we get back so we don't lose a whole generation because of what happened in the pandemic? I think that's important.
Thank you very much.
But I also,
Thank you.
There was another point.
Lisa, did you have a question too?
No, excuse me. I just
Didn't know if you were done.
I had one more thing.
I'll speak after Dave's finished.
The state lost 30. This is from 2020 to 2024. We somehow lost 33,869 students. However, Stoughton increased in the same time period from 2024, 194 students. So it's kind of interesting that we're bucking the trend, which is people fleeing from Massachusetts in way of students.
And they're coming
to
to Stoughton.
Stoughton seems to be attracting students. So I thought that was interesting. So those are just a few things I wanted to bring up. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Eric, do you have a question? Or Lisa? Lisa?
Yeah.
Do you have a question, Lisa, or a comment?
Yeah, I just want to express the concern about using free cash for the school budget. I think as a finance committee member and as a group as a whole, we have a fiduciary responsibility to the entire town, and the school budget represents 67%. So the taxpayers are taking care of the schools very, very well. We just have to keep in mind that we're responsible for the entire town. And to use free cash for an operating budget. That's a mistake we've made year over year in the past that we cleaned up, and I would hate to see us go back to that.
Well, thank you very much for that. The school budget's not 67% of the total budget, but the free cash policy of the Finance Committee, I'm going to just put this out there for the public now. I've explained this before. Free cash policy of the Finance Committee is each year we've dropped the amount of free cash that gets put into the budget by $300,000. This was a hashed out negotiation with the Finance Committee a few years ago in order to slowly wean the town off of using free cash. And last year was $2.3 million. The year before was 2.6, 2.9. Everyone here can add 300 going backwards. So this year here, the free cash available, according to the Finance Committee policy, would be $2 million. That's just the policy. And that policy was created years ago to slowly cut that down and to not have a dramatic drop-off. It was a long negotiated, and people who are here remember it. But yeah, that's what it was. So as far as using free cash in the budget, we have used free cash in the budget for years, and there is a process in place now to limit that going forward, each year dropping at $300,000. Now, the money that is left over has been used for town meeting articles. So at the same time that we've been cutting the free cash going into the budget over these years, we've been spending that money at town meeting rather than borrowing, because years ago, all of the free cash went into the budget, and then we borrowed for everything. And then this Finance Committee, over time, has cut that, so we're not borrowing as much at town meeting. We're spending more cash at town meeting and slowly cutting the free cash in the town budget. Regardless if it's school, town, whatever, it's all one bucket of money, one budget, and that's how the Finance Committee has done this for years. I just wanted to let the public know the Finance Committee policy on free cash. Also, I wanted to kind of put this out there. The Finance Committee did not cut the school budget. I've been receiving emails that we didn't cut the budget.
No.
I want to put that out there.
I want to make a correction about the policy.
You want to correct me on the policy?
I'd like to make a point, because it's one aspect of that, because I was there when all those years.
Yeah, you voted in favor of it too, didn't you?
I did. I absolutely did. But what you won't see in that policy is a cap that says you can only go to 300,000. It said we were going to work our way, we're going to wean ourselves off of free cash, because it's a bad thing to depend on free cash in your operating budget. So when we got to zero, and we're sitting on a budget right now in front of us that's at zero free cash dependency, that's a really good thing. And that if we start to say, now we're going to hash out all our problems and we're going to introduce free cash, that's reintroducing a structural deficit. Brand new. It's like making that mistake all over for FY25 that we tried to avoid ever since the mistake was made in the past. It was not a cap.
Okay, Dave,
it was a method to try to get ourselves off of it.
Then let me
now
ask
we're
you
at
a
zero.
question, Dave.
We're at zero right now.
Based on the free cash policy of the Finance Committee, and you were there, you voted it, how much is available to the budget this year? By policy, not by what you're talking.
Zero.
No.
Zero.
What was
It's
last
zero
year?
because
What was
we
last
got
year?
to zero.
What was last year, Dave? What was
Last year was $2.3 million.
So what's $2.3 million minus 300,000?
No, because the policy
What's $2.3 million
was not a
minus
cap of
300,000?
300,000. That's what you're overlooking in your statement.
Dave, I'm stating
you're
what the
overlooking.
policy was when it was voted.
That was a method to wean ourselves off of free cash. And we got a year in which the town said, we're going to get rid of that problem all at once. And we're sitting on a budget in front of us now that brings it to zero. So when we start to talk about this again, you introduce free cash again, that's starting that problem from zero as a brand new problem that you're introducing. That's how I look at it.
Thank you, Dave, for helping with the 2.3 minus 300,000. Mr. Anzavino, you have a question on this?
I'm just going to make a statement. I'm not going to get into a back and forth. The only place free cash has been used in the budget is in the municipal side. Now, all of a sudden, maybe the schools need a little help. They certainly chipped in $2 million last year without a problem to try and help out the town. And now all of a sudden, no, we got to zero. We shouldn't use it at all now. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
And one more thing about that.
Dave, we're not going to have a bunch of back and forth. We're not going to have a bunch of
the health budget contributed to net school spending. 2/3 of that money.
We're not going to have a bunch of back and forth. Remember that? Thank you. Elliot, you have anything?
I need to say something.
Chet? No? Okay, thank you. Elliot, did you have anything?
Well, there might be some, calling it free cash. It sounds like it's, you go out in the backyard, you dig it up, it's free cash. We can do whatever we want with. No, free cash is not free. It's your money and everybody else's money here. And just to clarify things, and Vaughn touched on it, borrowing money, our debt service, which is from borrowing money, is several $1 million a year. So if we can stop borrowing money, we save a huge amount of money by using what we have and not borrowing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric, absolutely.
You're the best. Through you to Dr. Bayet, if that's all right, and then hopefully we'll let you go. Just because I like to be able to go from this meeting knowing what to do next. In terms of the budget itself, outside of voicing the support that we've voiced, is there anything practical we can be doing between now and when we do our voting at the end of this cycle to help in terms of solving these problems and particularly responding to the issues that have been brought forward by the public tonight?
Mr. Chairman, through you, I believe that the school committee is going to be taking this discussion up in March, probably not once, probably twice, and then into April. So I'm going to defer to the school committee as part of that. They'll look at my recommendations, they'll change them, they'll upgrade them, all of that. We'll go through that process. I do think, though, to your question, the school department did not put out big signs that said, let's go to the FinCom meeting. I just want you to make sure that you know that. We received calls about the time of the meeting, and we were honest and said it's at this time. My plan, as I've shared with the chair very briefly, is I'd like to change our process as a school department. And by that, what I mean is to create the opportunity that before it comes to FinCom, much of the priorities that were articulated tonight, parents and others, employees, are making. Clearly, there's some very definitive comments that were made tonight around all different topics, and the school committee and I will take those up. But one of the things I started and was part of in my last district that worked very well was we had a Saturday, we called it Saturday workbook. And what it was my budget already cleaned up to the school committee, and it was an open meeting for anybody to come between 9 and 12 and talk about anything to do with the budget in terms of priorities. But I want to also articulate, I haven't seen what the line item of free cash is. I'd like a copy of that if somebody has it. Because we do have turnbacks from the school side. We constantly hear we don't, but we do. There's at least one line item, if not two. The second part is the issue of health care is a very serious one, because when I sat on the school committee, 1998 to 04, just to give you some history, I had to negotiate health care as part of collective bargaining. I was the chair in 2000. I had to negotiate it as a member of the negotiations. That was taken away under the regulations, to be quite honest, in order to try to save some money. In other words, it probably cost me at the time, as a school committee member, less in health care because of the type of employees that I have. Our employees on the school side benefit all of the employees of the town, all employees. Police, fire, town hall, DPW, whoever, because you can't go out to a public bid with just police and fire. You'll get killed in terms of the cost increase, because their livelihood is grounded on the potential of death on a regular basis and so on and so forth. And although there's a lot of changes in education that are concerning, that's not like, we don't go to work with that concept every day. So yes, I have most of the employees. When you break down the number of employees who actually take health care, about 53, 54% of my employees take health care. Thereabouts. I had 22 employees this year who actually gave up health care. Nobody wants to talk about that. We have a significant number of new employees who didn't take health care. You're looking at one of them. So there has to be some semblance of factual information when we talk about health care. It's the biggest significant long-term issue we have, not only for our active employees, but our retired employees. And what I'm hearing out of Washington on that issue is more burden is going to be placed at the state level, not less. And the impact that that's going to have at the local level, I think, is only going to grow. I think, lastly, from some of the comments that was said earlier, the school department wants to be a partner with the town, municipal government, its elected leaders and appointed leaders. I have never presented a budget where I try to take from one to make sure the school department gets what it needs, and I won't. That's a history that I have going back to being involved in politics, but as a superintendent working for the town of Stoughton, I am not here, nor is the school committee, I believe I can say this, looking in any way, shape, or form to take away from any other department in order to subset our department. We have to be willing partners in that at all times. But I do think, to a prior comment, as somebody who's sat at a town meeting and seen free cash spent well and at times not spent well, in my personal opinion, that there are certain situations where you have to use free cash. Free cash, it's an awful title, is basically the turnbacks from the prior year where you thought you were going to spend $5,000 on a line item and you spent $4. And that's part of it. It's part of my Medicaid reimbursement that goes back to the general fund, and so on and so forth. That said, the story should not ever be about us versus them. It should be about the town of Stoughton. We are partners in that. We want to be partners in that. We'll fight for every penny, absolutely. But the idea is to make sure, in my opinion, that Stoughton Schools becomes better and continues to try to improve. And I use the word try because there are a lot of goals out there. But we are also a growing public school system, one of the only ones in the area except for cities. Remember that as we're going through some of that process. Thank you for the time and the opportunity. I'm now defer to the chair for any last comments.
I just wanted, you made a statement that you're going to be working on this through March. I just want you to be aware that we will start making our votes on the 27th.
Yep.
And I just wanted to make sure you knew that.
Yep.
And what we were given, and I won't go into the little dollars, but we received notice that the free cash has been certified at $4.9 million. If you hadn't received that, I can send you what we got.
Thank you.
And I actually did have one follow-up, if that's all right, Mr. Chairman.
That's fine.
Just parallel question, again, kind of thinking towards action items coming out of this meeting. Because for the record, I support our policy of sheltering these families. I'm actually very grateful that we're able to provide them some semblance of stability and education while they're here. But I share everyone's concern with making sure the town is treated fairly. So I'm just curious, as individuals in the town, what practical steps we can take to ensure that. In other words, whose office do we need to be flooding with calls and emails?
I believe the governor's office.
Great.
And the reason is, I know for a fact, working with Senator Timilty, Representative Phillips, and Representative Galvin, that the frustration level of trying to get connected and get answers has been frustrating for elected officials. They've done everything I have asked of them in every phone call, getting me the meetings with the proper folks and all of that. So I just think that there's a real disconnect, keeping politics aside.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Johnny, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Vaughn. I just wanted to say that as a synopsis, we all want enough staff and for the children and for the teachers. We really don't want to cut any programs at all. But the big picture is there's a big problem causing us not to have enough money, and the revenues are also down. And we need to figure out a solution. So we're not really trying to purposely punish anyone, but there's a big problem out there, and that needs to be addressed.
All right, thank you. Lisa, you have a question? Comment?
A comment. I just wanted to add to the previous speaker's point that even if the money comes from the state, that is still taxpayer dollars. And the increase in the burden on the taxpayers is above and beyond, and it's unsustainable. And we all wish we could be ideal and take care of the world, but again, we have to have a sustainable, reasonable, fiduciary, responsible budget.
All right, thank you very much. Have any other questions or comments from the committee? Article 15, General Fund Operating Budget, Education, Stoughton Public Schools. Okay, any more questions or comments from the public on the Article 15, General Fund Operating Budget, Stoughton Public Schools?
I just have an internal question, Vaughn. When we leave this meeting with the schools, are we leaving it open so that they could potentially be invited back if we need them?
I guess theoretically speaking.
Well, I don't know if your schedule, your calendar allows room for that, or is it just jammed full? I mean,
we have some free days.
You do? All right.
See what happens.
Okay. Thank you.
Theoretically, anyone could come back. You know what I mean? As long as we're open, right? Okay, any other questions or comments from the public? Article 15, General Fund Operating Budget for FY25, Education Budget, Stoughton Public Schools. Any other questions from the committee? No. No more comments from the public or the committee. We're going to go to the next item on the agenda, Southeastern Regional High School. Thank you very much, Chair Weiss. Thank you very much, Dr. Baeta. What is it?
Pleasure. Thank you very much. We really appreciate having you. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the comments to the Finance Committee and the public. I would like to adjourn our meeting, if we may.
Sure.
Okay.
Unless you want to stay.
I mean, I'm happy to stay, but I would like to adjourn and let my members go. Can I have a motion to adjourn? That was made by Fabian Francois Marset. And do I have a second? Seconded by Armando Barbosa. Vote. All in favor? Aye. All right. The meeting for the school committee is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening. Next item on the agenda, Southeastern Regional High School.
These are both on 20.
Hello, would you
The next two school budgets are on page 28 in the budget.
Turn the mic on and pull it close. Make sure there's a green light on there, down the bottom. There you go, just like that.
Okay. I'm Robin Zoll. I'm the Southeastern Regional School Committee member from Stoughton. And I have our budget. Our budget process is a little different than the town budget. Every January, when the governor puts out the budget, we get the budget and we get the assessments that we put on the towns. The total budget next year for Southeastern is $39,269,392, of which we're getting $24,416,226 in state aid, and the local assessments are $15,232,041, $232,041. So our budget has increased by 6.2%, and that's our Southeastern is operating at net school spending.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. We have the letter here saying that the for Stoughton's assessment is $1,549,094. Is that
Yes,
the
it
number you
is.
have?
It's an increase of 24,000 over last year.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Okay.
And
What was that number again?
What was in the budget?
Yes, it's actually less than what was in the budget listed on page 28.
Is it a typo, Vaughn? I just want to make sure I'm clear. It's showing a 4.7% change But a town meeting approved number is, like the department just said, is only 20-something thousand, or what is it, 40,000?
When I went through this, Dave, with the new number, I come out with 1.57%.
Oh, okay, so this 4.7, I don't have to follow that.
Yeah, I'm not.
I think they're trying to tie it back to actual 23. That's what it looks like, but I don't know.
All right, we have any questions or comments from the committee on the Southeastern Regional Schools budget? Elliot, you have a question?
Yes, I do. How many students from Stoughton are at Southeast Regional?
Our projection for next year, the October 1st figure was 123.
Can you use the microphone, please?
Okay. The October 1st figure was 123 from Stoughton. We increased our student population by 40 students. 36 came from Brockton.
Good place to be from. Far from.
Any other questions or comments from the committee on the Southeastern Regional High School budget? Diane, great, we haven't heard from you.
Hi, Robin. Hi. No, I don't want to comment on the school. However, I was given the job because Sue Herman isn't here anymore. She always took the list of kids and made sure they actually did live in Stoughton. I've been trying to do that for the last week to get a hold of someone for the listing. Got any suggestions? Well, let me step back just a bit. Once a kid starts going to Southeast Regional, are the addresses ever checked to make sure, Bobby Smith may live in Stoughton and then all of a sudden move to Avon? Who should be paying the bill now? So it's really hard to keep track. I get the list of all the kids. I think I have maybe 8 or 9 that I can't find in my system that I'm trying to make sure that they actually are our students.
I'll speak to somebody in administration to try to get you the information.
Just give me, you know what, you can call me, give me a number to call.
Can I just add something for that? I believe that, doesn't our public schools use the health records because we get the health records from the students? Aren't there health records when students come in?
You mean when they enroll?
Yeah, when they
Our school.
Yeah, in the public school system, right?
Right.
Isn't that
I have the list for October 1st. The school gets what they call the town audit. In other words, all the kids who basically live in town but actually go to other public schools. I have a list of the kids from Southeast Regionals. I do not have their addresses. So I match them with all the kids that currently are in our system, but I've got like 7 or 8 kids that I can't find. So we just want to make sure.
That's why I brought it
Sue
up.
Herman used to do this.
Yeah, I brought it up.
Actually, I used to do it years ago, and then Sue Herman took it over.
Yeah, because
I don't know if anybody does it here now, so.
The state has a connector system, so everybody's insured, so there should be a record somewhere that, as a school processes an enrollment, that they should be able to know where somebody lives from their own records, right?
Yes, I have 8
That's why
kids
it's a good question.
that we enrolled in our school.
All right,
Go to Southeastern Region.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you.
It's a great question, Vaughn. That's
I didn't
worth.
say it's not a great question. I'm
Okay.
just, between the two of you, you're not gonna get an answer. You want to talk more about it? We're going to get an answer.
Thanks, Robin.
I was just saying, if we're not going to get an answer between the two of you, I mean,
Yeah.
that's all. It is a great question. I mean, absolutely, it's a great question. And they said that they would communicate something.
Yeah, I'll speak to
And I was offering the health records as a path to get to what it is, because they probably keep a record of the enrolled students. Looking at their health records probably would give you an answer.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, and I don't want to say, we're only just trying to make sure that we're actually only paying for the kids that actually live here in town. There are 8 kids that I cannot find in our system that enrolled with us. I think that's only fair to get their addresses and figure out if they actually do live here.
I wish you a lot of luck with that. Thank you.
It's been a job I've had to do for the last 14 years I've been here.
Okay, great. We have any other questions or comments from the committee? On the, Elliot, you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick question here. I went to there way back. What are the various courses, I guess, they teach now?
We have 22 shops right now, everything from the traditional electrical, which is still our most popular, and plumbing and all, HVAC, et cetera. But we now have visual and performing arts, we have culinary, we have cybersecurity, we're going to start robotics. So we basically, I've just gone into diesel technology because that's a big one. We basically, in fact, tonight I was at the advisory dinner because we have industry people who advise us about what they want us to teach.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Yes, Dave.
This is an actual question for the department. Thank you. Through you, Vaughn. Does the Stoughton Public Schools offer any programming that isn't available to Southeastern? So if you have a kid who, he wants to learn HVAC, electrical, whatever they want to learn, but they also want to march in a band or they want to do drama, whatever. Well, I think you have your own drama, right? You have a drama
We have
club?
drama, we do not have music, which
Right.
we'd love to have music, but right now
But do you get any kind of, I guess I'll call it mutual aid for lack of a better word, but do you get some kind of inter-district help with students who need to march in the band? Will they let them in?
I think there is an agreement. I think several years ago, some Southeastern students who lived in Stoughton did participate. Yeah, because we don't want kids to miss out. So.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, any other questions, comments from the committee on Southeastern Regional High School budget? No more questions or comments? All right. Questions or comments from the public on Southeastern Regional High School, which is part of Article 15 General Fund Operating Budget. Cynthia, please identify yourself for the record.
Still Cynthia Walsh, 1096 Park Street, Precinct 3. My comment is, this is a wonderful option for students who don't fit into the traditional college-bound courses that are presently at our high school. My younger brother was a graduate and enjoyed his time there, and I think it's a great option for a community that we've mentioned is not in the higher economic classes. This is a great opportunity for those young people that might come from families where dad and mom are servers or landscapers to enter the middle class, become electricians, become plumbers, become printers. So I'm glad we have this option. I hope it continues.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Any other questions or comments from the public, Southeastern Regional High School budget? Hearing none, we will go to the next item on the agenda, which is Norfolk County Agricultural High School, which is also part of Article 15 General Fund Operating Budget, FY25 education budgets. And we received the tuition rates for the Norfolk County Agricultural High School. And there are, I guess, 5 currently enrolled, 9 applications as a senior. Hopefully that senior will be graduating, leaving 4 plus 9 applications, would possibly be 13 there for next year. And you should have all received the email, except for
Unless you get yours.
Lisa did get the email. Yes, but I added that in there. Oh, it didn't? I'll have to take a look.
28, same as the other one, right below it.
Yeah, so the tuition rate is $45.07 per student times how many students we go for, which I think would be 13.
Yeah.
Just
Senator
to,
Elliott? Yes, Diane?
for you, to you, and I'll say this to Dave, too,
I got the
for you,
numbers here.
Mr. Chairman. I did check, and all of the kids that are listed in Southeast, Norfolk Aggie do actually live in Stoughton.
I got the numbers.
Okay, Mr. Anzavino?
If you look in your budget on page 28, and you look under the Norfolk City Agricultural, the number in the book was 36,000, which was a decrease. If you use the numbers we were given and assume all 13 go, that number becomes 58,591, which becomes a 51% increase. Southeast Regional was a 1.6% increase. So the new total for the regional expenses and so forth for these two is $1,607,685 for a total increase of 2.8%. You get all that, Dave? I can repeat it. All right. As Bill liked to say, $1,607,685.
Which is less than is actually listed.
But so that would be, so it's a, I mean, it's a savings. It's about $25,000 less, a little under, in that budget.
Yeah, but it's great that you got the actual so that when we build it, we have something that's real. So that's good.
Yeah, well, we went through this last year with Norfolk Ag, and Vaughn and I actually took what we had and we did it so we come up with a round number. We got the 38,808. We just took, who was here now, take out the seniors, what's coming, and that's how we got the number last year. I mean, it's not rocket science, you just take a shot. And we had tight budget last year, so we just made sure it fit. If they had got a couple more students, we would have been short, but that's where we stand with those two.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the committee on the Norfolk County Agricultural High School budget? Hearing none, any questions or comments from the public on the Norfolk County Agricultural High School budget? Cynthia, please identify yourself for the record.
I'm the previous speaker.
Thank you, Cynthia Walsh. It's at
96 Park Street, Precinct 3. One of your members, John, his brother Joseph graduated from there, and he manages my farm. There are still agricultural sites in Stoughton and in the state of Massachusetts. I have sheep, goats, chickens, and a sow. Obviously, he has to do something else. But when you see the word agricultural, I hope you just don't think of cows. They have a veterinary assistant program. They have a program for future florists. They have small machine repair. That's not everything, but that's some of the things that I know about. Again, like Southeastern Regional, it's an excellent option for people that are already career-oriented. They're not interested really in going to college. They want to get into the workforce, and this is a great assist.
Thank you very much for that. Any other questions or comments from the public? Norfolk County Agricultural High School budget. Please identify yourself for the record.
Mark Zemanian, Precinct 1. I haven't talked at all tonight here, so I figured I'd get up and say something. Actually, I was in there for 2.5 hours, so I am in support of this. I have Irish twins, both of which are applying to Norfolk Aggie. One this year has already applied, one next year. They're going to be looking at two very different programs, and that's what I really like about this. They have a diesel mechanic program there that one of my daughters is very interested in. The other one wants to be a veterinarian. This is an incredibly diverse school, and I only say that because I just got back from a tour of the school, and I was truly impressed. from their equestrian system to their small engines, but botanical. Just a great program, and I hope that you'll support all the children that want to go there. This will bring my two children, who have both been homeschooled, forward into the working world when this is done. Whether or not they attend university or tech school is going to be up to them, but this is a great opportunity for kids who, as somebody said, don't fit into traditional learning, who are accustomed to learning at through a different style or a different pace, and I fully support this. I hope you do the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zamanian. Any other questions or comments from the public? Norfolk County Agricultural High School. Yes, Chet.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm not going to take too much time, but I am a product of technical school, Caner Tech Carpentry. I made a living, did Marine Corps thing, so I'm very supportive of young kids who don't want to go to college, but want to get a trade and make $65, $75 an hour. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Chet, I did not know that. I too am a product of a technical high school, but I did also go on to college, but I did go to a technical high school. And I found it very, very enlightening.
I mean, in full disclosure, I did go to a college for an associate degree.
Yeah. All right, any other questions or comments from the public on the Norfolk County Agricultural High School budget? Hearing none. We'll go to the next item on the agenda, which is... Any other matters? I don't hear any other matters. Okay.
Oh, I have an update for you.
What's the update?
I was told tonight we should be getting more information on Friday about the revenues, so hopefully that's coming. And I need to have a discussion with you afterwards.
Yes, Dave.
On the same topic that the previous speaker just said about revenues, I went to the Finance Committee handbook, which I want to pull a quote that I think it's important for everybody to know. This is best practices for Finance Committee members. Best practices suggest that the forecast should be updated frequently. A suggestion would be to update the forecast every other month to reflect changes that may have taken place and update significant changes promptly to see what the impact of these decisions is long term. As the annual budget process proceeds, policy decisions based on revenue and expenditure forecasts can positively impact any projected revenue gap. Ultimately, through a series of revenue enhancement and expenditure control policies, any projected gap can be eliminated, and the budget will be balanced. In other words, you have to have the revenue and the expenditures to know if it's balanced. These budget balancing decisions will have a ripple effect upon the projected gaps of future years. The fiscal policies adopted in the first year of a forecast can avoid or reduce preliminary deficits in future years. Thus, it is very critical to evaluate and understand the long-term impacts of decisions. A revenue and expenditure forecast is a critical part of the decision-making policy and one of the most important financial tools available to a municipality. I just wanted to get that in for the record.
Thank you very much for that, Dave. Yes, Jonna.
Thank you, Vaughn. When Dave mentioned a Finance Committee handbook, is that something all of us can get?
If you'd like, I can email one to you.
I would love it. Thank you.
Okay.
Anne.
Can I
Yes,
have?
I know it's been requested before. John emailed it out before, but we'll email it again.
Yeah, I think Joel asked about it last year, and I just talked to the state, and they get me the link, and I have it, and I'll just email it out to the committee. I'll add you on.
How many pages? Is it big? Is it something that can be printed out?
You know, we're trying to get away from all the printouts, but it's...
How many pages, Dave? 130? I think it is. That sounds about right. I was thinking it was $160, but maybe it's 130.
Let's see.
Okay, so...
Yeah, 2021, it was 169 pages.
169 pages? That was pretty close.
That's the 21, so.
I must have forgot the last 9 pages. Okay, next item in the agenda.
Hearing nothing else, I would like to make a motion to continue the public hearing to Thursday, March 7th at 7 p.m. in the Great Hall on the 3rd floor of Town Hall, 10 Pearl Street, Stoughton, Mass. 02072.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, next item on the agenda.
Motion to adjourn.
Laura gets a second. Motion and a second.
That's at 10:14.
All in favor?
The most important second.
All opposed? Hearing none. Meeting's adjourned. Thanks for watching.